Welcome to Alola, where we find sand, sun, and surfing Raichu. Oh, you might want to watch out, brah, because here in Alola, the ecosystem gets a little wild. Because that sand will enslave you to help turn it into a castle. The divine light radiates from an eldritch beast beyond our realm, and well, at least the Raichu are cute and love to serve us pancakes. From Kanto to Kalos I have already covered all of their ecosystems. And now in Alola, I've managed to outswim deadly Dhelmise, withstand the hugs of Bewear, and partner with the Aether Foundation itself to allow me to venture through ultra space, witness universes beyond our own, and to bring to you the complete Alola ecosystem. Howdy there, I'm Krillik, and welcome to the 7th edition of the Pokemon Ecosystem series. I'm really excited over Alola. It's one of my favorite regions in all of Pokemon. And if you haven't seen the last ones, don't worry. You can watch those after this because we're going to quickly go over our rules so that way we can make sure we're giving Alola our best. I will be using Pokemon Ultra Moon as my basis for analysis as it is more fleshed out. And yes, before you ask, I will be covering Ultra Beasts, Legendaries, and a number of the Wormhole universes as they all have at least a small ecosystem that we can work to understand. This is because Alola's legendaries are actually all related to the ecosystem and play a very big part in it. After all, the Tapu's special moves are literally called Nature's Wrath. We have some massive routes that are sectioned off a lot, and we do have a day and night cycle back. We have different ways to encounter Pokemon, which will include normal grass, shadows, fishing, just for a couple examples. Usually we will only include Pokemon within a certain range though. For example, if in the grass we find, let's say, levels 5 through 10, and if we fish and we get 15, we will not consider that level 15 Pokemon. But Alola seems to be pretty even across the board in terms of their range, so this is going to give us some really nice complete ecosystems to work with. I will also note that if Pokemon are found in a different section within a route, such as an area blocked off by rocks, then we will consider them their own group separately while keeping them in mind as to how they may affect the rest of the route when appropriate. Any Pokemon that we've already talked about in past editions, such as Magikarp, will be quickly recapped rather than all of their information be read. So, Magikarp is a bottom feeder. It can survive any harsh environment, and then we would move on to, let's say, Wishy-Washy, and we'll learn everything we can about it, find its diet, and if we don't find a diet, then we'll actually just look at its inspirations to help us give as realistic piece of analysis as possible. That was awkward. SOS encounters will be on a case-by-case basis. They tend to overcomplicate things down and would have bogged down the analysis, and this is already a very long video, so I will simply only bring them up when there are strong outliers, such as Carbink accidentally calling its predator Sableye, or Cubone calling on Kangaskhan for help. Finally, we will not be including any Pokemon not found on routes. These routes have accuracies down to 1% encounters, meaning that even if they are rare, the Pokemon found on the routes are found in the general area. Routes are otherwise inconsistent in movies or anime, so we cannot rely on those for any accurate additional information. And with all of that out of the way, let's just begin with the climate of Alola in general. As we reach each island, we'll open them up by talking about their overall environment. And as always, thank you Bulbapedia for being the basis for our Pokemon knowledge today. Alola has a warmer climate than other regions, being more tropical, similar to its real-world counterpart, Hawaii, who would have guessed. For example, a thriving rainforest grows on Akala Island. The Pokemon themselves have also adapted to Alola's tropical atmosphere, resulting in regional variants for some Pokemon. The biggest example being the Exeggutor that grow on Poni Island, who have reached lengths other Exeggutor are unable to reach, due to the amount of sun that shines over the islands. These Exeggutor match the flora that grow on the islands. However, Mount Lanakila, Alola's highest point, constantly experiences snow and hail due to its high altitude. Each of the natural islands also experiences a wide variety of weather conditions. For example, Ula'Ula Island hosts environments with harsh sun, extreme sandstorms, and frequent rain, in addition to the snow and hail on Mount Lanakila. Exeggutor Island is known to have common rain showers as well. These often result in either rainbows during the day or meteor showers during the night when the rain clears. Imagine that. Rain followed up by actual meteor showers. Brings a whole new meaning to meteorologist, I suppose. Melemele Island. Though steeped in nature, Melemele Island in the northwest of the archipelago archipelago, oh my goodness, has the least extreme environments. It is home to Alola's largest settlement, Hau'oli City. Its routes gently slope upwards towards the center of the island to form a gradual mountain, on top of which are the ruins of conflict. A notable Melemele Island landmark is 10 Carat Hill, which was formed out of an underwater volcano and has an open-air hollow in the middle itself, resembling a volcano. We now finally begin with Route 1. This beautiful path filled with flora connects Iki Town and its north end to Hau'oli City in the south. This is also split into a section known as Hau'oli Outskirts, an area located between Hau'oli City and Route 1. You can catch a whiff of salt on the southerly winds. We find the following Pokemon at all times a day: Caterpie, who eats leaves, a rare encounter of Pichu, who sticks to berries, and Baniri hopping around eating their fill of grass and other vegetation. Meanwhile, we only find Ladybug nearly about a quarter of the time during the day, as it does prefer to eat nectar and pollen alongside vegetation. It's different compared to your normal Ladybug, as many Pokemon are, which is why we take info from the games first and foremost before we look into their inspirations. An example I give often in these is that Vileplume is based on the Rafflesia flower. Vileplume is carnivorous, Rafflesia flowers are not. So, again, we have to use Pokemon information first and foremost. At night, we find Spinarak in equal numbers to Ladybug, and Spinarak is an opportunistic carnivore who will simply wait for anything that falls into its web. It's a bit of a jumping spider as well, so it might occasionally eat some plant Pokemon as necessary. Otherwise, it has a lot of prey here, so with the exclusion of Baniri, it's probably eating well and doesn't have to eat anything else. Though, now we can begin with our first new Pokemon of Alola, one that only appears at night, and in fact, it is the Alolan variant of Rattata. Alola Rattata searches out fresh food by smell and ignores anything spoiled. The whiskers provide Alola Rattata with a keen sense of smell, allowing it to find hidden food instantly. Humans are known to use Alola Rattata when they go shopping for fresh food. I imagine it's kind of like a stud finder, or when we're searching for metal on a beach and you're just holding the Rattata out. Just a little squeak every single time, and it squeaks incredibly rapidly when you get to fresh food. Alola Rattata are more active when the sun sets. They will search for food in order to give it to their boss, and it has been even known to sneak into people's homes to find food. They use their whiskers to locate the food in said homes, and there have been massive outbreaks in Alola due to this. As a result, Alola Rattata has become an issue of public concern for humans. We don't have a diet change here between our two Rattatas, normal and Alolan variants, with one exception. Alolan Rattata ignores anything that is spoiled, preferring fresh food. This means that it is not entirely opportunistic, or scavenger for that matter, but I'm still sure they'll eat whatever they can, especially in a pinch. I'm also willing to bet that they are still hunters, as mice may be, or rats, I suppose. They're kind of confusing when it comes to their visual physiology and everything like that. Either way, they'll be aggressive and go after every Pokemon we've talked about so far, except Baniri. This means eating other small mammals, insects, vegetation, fruit, you name it, but again, only if it's fresh. To follow, we shift back to daytime and find a little aggressive creature that appears about over a third of the time with the name of Yungoos. Yungoos has a voracious appetite and is always hungry, a little bit redundant there, which in turn makes it more ferocious. Much of its body is dominated by its stomach, and it is able to digest food quickly. Now that is incredibly interesting, because that would make it very similar to a ruminant animal, being cows, sheep, goats, and deer. They have 4 compartments to their stomach to help with their digestion, which often is mistakenly said to be for different stomachs. But nope, one singular stomach with 4 parts, each one serving a different purpose within the digestion process. But let's just continue learning about Yungoos so we can see what it actually eats. Its strong teeth allow it to crush and consume the hardest of objects. This Pokemon stalks through its territory searching for food until it passes out from exhaustion. However, it is believed that Yungoos decides its territory based on safety, so that it can collapse anywhere without fear. It is able to eat anything, but usually prefers fresh hunt. This Pokemon is found in Alola, although it is not native to the region and was in fact imported there. A very aggressive, invasive species that eats anything that it can fit into its mouth. Got it. That's not problematic at all. Though I doubt it's flat out eating rocks, this definitely means that it will still not hesitate to crunch on the shells of crustaceans for calcium, like they're some sort of dried ramen. Our following two Pokemon are found at all times of day, starting with Grubbin. Now, Grubbin typically lives underground. He uses its jaws as a weapon, a tool for burrowing, and for extracting sap from trees, adding sap to the natural diet. Additionally, it can create sticky threads, which it shoots from its mouth and uses to swing around as though on suspension wires. It also uses these threads to stop opponents from moving, so it can then grab them in its mandibles, which are strong enough to snap thick tree branches. Even its natural enemies such as Rookity and Hoot Hoot would rather run away than risk getting caught in its mandibles. By the way, Rookity is not an Alola, but it's important to note, because I'll show my hand and now say that Pikipek is on this route, yet it's not considered a natural enemy. If we look specifically at Pokédex entries, Rookity and Hoot Hoot are directly referenced, but not Pikipek, despite first appearing together here in Alola. Now, let's finish up Grubbin before we dig into that little pile of worms. It loves electricity and can be found near power plants. They can also be found near electric-type Pokemon as a means of avoiding attacks from bird-like Pokemon. As mentioned in Pokemon Sleep, Grubbin uses its mandibles to make nests underground. It has been observed sleeping in the dirt. It is believed that the dirt it sleeps in is possibly fluffy and comfortable. Fluffy dirt does exist. Now, this doesn't tell us everything about the Pokemon's diet, and in fact, I will posit that it eats the literal soil itself. Technically, this is because of its burrowing and how its evolution, Charjabug, if we look at its info, is known to eat hummus thanks to the Ultra Sun Pokédex, meaning our lovely Grubbin is a sap eater and a decomposer. I mean, it's a bug after all, so we shouldn't really be surprised. But our final entry for this section of Route 1 is Pikipek. Now, despite its slender appearance, Pikipek has powerful neck muscles and is able to strike 16 times per second with its beak. Pikipek does not feel pain when using its neck muscles, and this allows it to not only drill through wood, but shatter stone as well. The holes it drills in trees are used for nesting, storing food, and collecting small glittering objects. The noise of this Pokemon pecking can be used to communicate with others. It feeds on berries and is able to attack opponents by zipping the leftover seeds at them. These shots have enough force to embed the seeds in trees. That's like the power of a BB gun, but in a small bird. I think it's only at 1'8", maybe? Either way, Talonflame is a natural predator of Pikipek, while Pikipek itself preys on Metapod. It generally lives in humid forests. So, we're getting mixed signals, right? Pikipek feeds primarily on berries, but is specifically said to prey on Metapod. When we look at its evolution, Trumbeak, it states that it fills its beak up with seeds, and then when it spots an enemy or prey, it will fire away. So it's not just pecking at Metapod because Metapod is hard and it reminds it of trees, and so it can peck through and hopefully find, whatever else it's looking for, which, woodpeckers, you peck through trees, you get the bug. That's it, right under the bark. What we can conclude for sure then is this. The Pikipek line are primarily eating berries, but supplement their diet with bug Pokemon. This would explain why Pikipek is not considered a natural predator of Grubbin. So, to summarize this specific area, most of our Pokemon aren't feeling excessively pressured by others. Our bugs are in high numbers, and while yes, Spinarak might eat a few unfortunate bugs, Rattata is focusing more on stealing higher quality food over constantly actively hunting, and Pikipek is enjoying berries while maybe shooting a few seeds at some of our bugs, while Yungoos is getting its meals wherever it can. Kind of an easy ecosystem to look at in this small area. Something we also find as we go through these routes is that there are 3 things that will encourage evolution on any given route, and this helps us with our analysis and our interactions. 1. How much food is there? If there is an abundance, then the Pokemon can survive easier and potentially evolve over time. 2. Are the Pokemon fighting over food? If 2 species fight for the same food source because there isn't enough, then one or both will evolve. And 3. Is a Pokemon constantly being hunted? If it is, then the Pokemon being hunted will likely evolve in order to defend itself, though this usually results in the predator evolving in response, causing the 2 species to shift back and forth as to who dominates the area over the other one, assuming that another creature isn't going to pop in and just shotgun them. I say all this because by looking at this route, despite the voracious appetite of Yungoos, we are not seeing any evolutions whatsoever. This doesn't mean that the route is peaceful in its entirety, rather, it means that there are enough other Pokemon in large amounts to ensure their population doesn't die out, meaning they don't feel the pressure necessary to reach evolution. As we shift to behind the rocks in this area that block off a small patch of grass, while the Pokemon here are a bit higher level, it is the only place where we find one Pokemon, and it's the only time we've been able to discuss it in this entire series, so I'm going to consider it. We find Alola Rattata, Young Goose only during the day, but in lower numbers in this section, Pikipek, Bonsly being the most common and who is just assumedly trying to scrape up nutrients from rocks in the area to survive. Honestly, if it's not doing that, then it doesn't actually eat anything at all. And then 2 new Pokemon. The first being Munchlax, who again, we have never actually seen in a commonly occurring encounter until now. I guess I could have included honey trees in the past, but I didn't count those as they were too varied and inconsistent and would not have had a proper observable effect on the overall ecosystem in the areas that they were in. They were more of a trap to catch Pokemon. Now, Munchlax is a hyperactive Pokemon. It does not mind walking and running from place to place as it looks for food, but it is usually very slow moving. Munchlax is known to eat an enormous amount of food daily to equal its own body weight. Munchlax tends to store food in its long fur, although it sometimes forgets about its hidden food. Its stomach allows it to eat nearly anything, even rotten food, and they are indifferent to flavor. It can also eat many servings of food at a time without chewing and rarely gets full. It eats the most food of any Pokemon besides its evolution Snorlax, and tends to raid villages for food intended to be thrown away. Now, it seems like Munchlax is eating anything and everything that doesn't move based on this information. In fact, it seems like Munchlax is playing a little bit of cleanup crew for our ecosystem. The problem, though, is that it is definitely not stopping at food being thrown away, so this may affect other Pokemon in the area relying on berries, for example, creating a food scarcity. Though this is the perfect opportunity for a Pokemon that has a more varied diet, maybe one that has a little bit of a carnivorous diet, and so one other Pokemon we see here, or the other one we see, is actually Rockruff. Now, Rockruff has an excellent sense of smell, and will never forget an odor after smelling it once. There are tales of it reuniting with its trainer after becoming lost by following the faintest traces of its scent, or their scent. It has lived with humans since ancient times. Rockruff is often recommended as a good Pokemon for beginner trainers due to its friendly nature and ability to bond with trainers easily. However, Rockruff is said to be a challenging Pokemon to raise, to the point where some trainers abandon it due to not being able to handle it. Shame. This Pokemon is very sociable and will greet others by rubbing them with the rocks around its neck, though I know that that is supposed to hurt a little bit. As it ages, it becomes wilder and more independent. Once it is close to evolving, it will begin to howl when the sun goes down. It has been said to leave its trainer's side and return only once it has evolved. Despite becoming more vicious as it matures over time, Rockruff never forgets its master's kindness. Now, wild Rockruff travel in packs until they evolve. A persistent Pokemon, it will continue going until it outlasts foes that are even more powerful. It intimidates opponents by using the rocks on its neck to hit the ground. As mentioned in Rocking Clawmark Hill, Rockruff trains itself by running around. I'm sorry, that caught me off guard a little bit. Just imagine it running in circles. I'm training! I swear, I'm training! I'm chasing this squirrel! I'm training! Now, it attacks foes the moment they flinch, and has been known to fight with Growlithe over territory. While no diet is stated, dogs are omnivores. Though, here comes the weird part about Pokemon dogs specifically, as they kind of seemingly shift from undomesticated to domesticated in an instant, which is not how domestication works in the slightest. Domestication is genuinely a decision on the part of the animal in real life, and will even boil down to genetics. It's why it takes years of breeding to even attempt domestication, because of just the actual brain. Hey, can you trust a human being? Or are you such an independent creature that you will not even do that? So, theoretically speaking, and yes, I oversimplified that, if these were fully wild, without humans, then sure, any dog in the Pokemon world would just be carnivores. But thanks to Arceus, Pokemon were intended to always be our equals, our friends, and basically allows the whole process to be circumvented for domestication, which also dramatically changes how Pokemon diets will end up working. All of that to just say dog, omnivore, wolf, carnivore, but dog Pokemon, omnivores. It is very fun to look at this route and see the decrease in Rattata and Yungoos, while Rockruff is here at all times of the day, and Munchlax is seemingly unaffected as it appears here. This may mean, or this may be the result of Munchlax literally just being here and eating more food, eating it all in excess. And Rattata and Yungoos know that they should avoid this area, not only because there's less food, but also because they don't want to wander in and be eaten by a Rockruff. Pikipek doesn't really have anything to worry about, as while it may get eaten on occasion, there's plenty of other Pokemon that are easier for Rockruff to catch. But we're not done with Route 1 yet, because while the water is out of our range, it only contains Pokemon we've spoken on, the interactions between in past editions anyway. On land, we have the Omnivore Wingull, Slowpoke enjoying what little fish it is able to catch, and Inkay, who is actually eating fish, crustaceans, and maybe even each other on occasion if desperate. And yes, I will at least say there are of course fish in the water for all three of these Pokemon to enjoy. And now we finally finish Route 1 with that, and while there was a lot of information, it is a very simple route. Future routes aren't as complicated as this one, with a few exceptions, which this one was incredibly strangely long and sectioned in an odd fashion overall. In future routes, we'll be getting more interesting interactions that will let me kind of paint a picture for you, but for now, I at least want to say thank you so much for watching. If you're enjoying this so far, please make sure you do subscribe, share this with others, and if you haven't checked the other ecosystem videos out, make sure you check those out after this one. And because I don't get sponsors and YouTube ad revenue is not reliable, I will ask you, if you can, please consider becoming a member of the channel for as little as $3 a month. You get behind the scenes content, you also get to see updates on here or the Patreon, and if you're a member specifically on YouTube, you will be able to see videos early. With that then, again, as always, thank you so much for watching, and on with the video. 10 Carat Hill. All the Pokemon found in this cave or within the farthest hollow are found at all times. Starting with the cave, we find blood-drinking Zubat, Psyduck who just eats what ducks eat, which includes worms, slugs, roots, seeds, frogs, insects, snails, fish, plants, crustaceans, and more, so we've got a lot going on there. Mawile is eating literally everything, including rocks, or rock Pokemon, which is mainly because of the fact that it has its little hair that allows it to eat anything that it does not like the taste of. Roggenrola actually subsists on water, which will cool its internal core and help it evolve over time, and Carbink just does not eat, waiting for the day that it randomly mutates and turns into Deontay, as Carbon will just randomly turn into Diamond. What's interesting though is that here in the cave, when Carbink calls out for help, other Carbink can appear, or its natural predator, a Sableye, will appear. Now, it's not asking the Sableye for help. Instead, when Carbink calls out for help, there's just a Sableye in the area, even though you can't call it normally. It's within screaming distance, I suppose. And the Sableye runs in like a little gremlin, and then just smacks this Carbink for us, taking all of its gems and dragging it back to its den, which is terrifying. Imagine screaming for help, and then another demon arrives. We're out here making trouble, and Sableye made it double. Now, moving on to the farthest hollow, we have Machop, who is established to be eating pretty much everything except for meat. Spinda, who appears on other routes without prey, is more than likely getting drunk on berries, which is a natural occurrence within the animal kingdom. Roggenrola, Carbink, and Rockruff are all here as well. But what makes these two sections interesting is that Zubat doesn't have a ton of prey here outside of Psyduck. Mawile is eating up, again, anything that comes near it, and sticks to the inside of the cave so that way its toothy hair blends in, and the rest of our Pokemon exists in the light and near plenty of vegetation. Rockruff is the only outlier here, but this could also be just a den where it rests, though it might also occasionally feed on some Psyduck and Spinda as it comes and goes. Route 2, a path that leads to the northern part of Melemele Island. It's famous for being a training ground for the local trainers. This route also has a number of sections, but we will consider the route as a singular unit that can interact with each other rather than forcing complete separation. This makes the most sense ecologically. In the morning, Yungoos. At night, Rattata. And this is going to be a common occurrence. And then at all times of the day, Ekans eating anything made of meat, Abra eating berries and dipping at the first sign of trouble, Drowsy being more common at night and only eating dream mist, if you can consider that eating, I suppose. Smeargle, who despite being a canine is only eating berries, Makuhita eating everything but meat, as many fighting type Pokemon do, Spearow going after bug Pokemon, Growlithe and Furfrou being dogs, meaning they're omnivores, Dunsparce eating mushrooms, we assume, and also dipping at the first sign of trouble, and then all of our new Pokemon, starting with Alolan Meowth. Now, the original Meowth was introduced to Alola as a gift to royalty. The luxurious royal lifestyle soon led to Meowth diverging from its origins and becoming the selfish, prideful, and cunning Alolan Meowth. As a result, Alolan Meowth's new pride also made them impulsive and fickle in nature. Alolan Meowth will turn hysterical if its coin or pride are besmirched. Due to the actions of humans in Alola, its population increased in numbers. When the monarchy fell, the rare Alolan Meowth went feral and eventually grew as common in Alola as anywhere else. It is known to be famously difficult to train due to their arrogant nature, though despite this, it is very popular with some trainers who enjoy giving it a lot of attention. And that's nice and easy. Even though it doesn't necessarily state a diet, it is a cat. It will be an obligate carnivore. Though looking at this route, it will likely get away with attacking Ekans. It will definitely primarily go after Rattata, Yungoos, Spearow, though Spearow are not found in the exact grass that this Meowth is found, so it might be more of an occasional snack. Note to follow Alolan Meowth here, we have Cutiefly, who is capable of detecting the aura of living things such as plants, people, and Pokemon. It uses this ability to predict the movements of its opponents. Its diet consists of pollen and nectar, drinking it through its long proboscis. That makes it a nectarivore. But we'll find out soon enough that it does not get to live freely in its fairy tale bug life. Any pollen it does not finish is stored in its fur. It collects nectar and pollen from flowers, which are found by the color and brightness of their auras. However, when a living creature is excited, its aura resembles a full flower in bloom. As a result, Cutiefly tends to gather around beings feeling strong emotions. When Cutiefly does draw close, it will painfully poke them with its long proboscis. This Pokemon can be found in fields and meadows, but is sometimes attracted to towns or buildings by the emotions of living beings. Loving nectar and pollen, it often gets into skirmishes with Butterfree over food. It is known to be drawn in by Fomantis' sweet scent and Gossiflor's pollen, and then Spinarak and Pineco are natural predators of Cutiefly. This would mean that while it doesn't have a ton of flowers here, Cutiefly's line is essential regarding pollination. Of course, then, there's the Butterfree line to assist, but Cutiefly are far more abundant throughout Alola, making them primary pollinators and very adept at doing so thanks to their ability to see an aura around their food of choice. Though, considering they are bugs, they're absolutely on the docket to be eaten by other birds and predatory bugs, as we've read with Spinarak and Pineco. Though, Pineco eating Cutiefly weirds me out, as I never really imagine it with a mouth. I get that we've established that it does wait for prey to come near it and then eats them, but it's still really odd to just visualize. Now, moving on, the last Pokemon here is Crabrawler. The foremost pair of legs has large blue pincers resembling boxing gloves. There is a small amount of meat in its claws, which is considered delicious. A competitive Pokemon that hates to lose, this Pokemon uses its large claws to protect its face and belly while it closes in on its opponents. It's a boxer after all. Crabrawler's pincers sometimes break off from overuse, but grow back rapidly. Its pincers are a popular ingredient for paella, making a tasty soup stock. It strives to achieve not only a high social standing, but a physically higher position as well. It can be found clinging to buildings or even tall people and will punch anyone who attempts to remove it from its perch. Hey, can you get off my head, dude? Bah, bah. Oh, God, I'm sorry. In the event that it does lose, its mouth will foam before it faints. While it is capable of splitting tree trunks, it usually punches trees known to knock down ripe berries. Many Crabrawler will gather around a tree to compete for those berries. They also prey on Execute. It has been known to mistake Executor for coconut trees, which shake and stomp Crabrawler off when climbed, probably remembering what they did to it before it evolved. Now, Crabrawler are known to climb snowy mountains in order to reach the top, however they tend to get lost and trapped up there. As a result, Crabrawler evolves into Crabominable in order to better adapt to the bitter cold. Now, that does remind me before we actually continue, I don't think I said it out loud, but any Pokemon not naturally found is not a Pokemon that we will discuss. So unfortunately, our starter Pokemon will never get discussed. Crabominable never appears on a route. I don't even think it appears in an SOS battle. As such, we will never talk about Crabominable in this ecology, but don't worry. There are other videos that I will make, and I will be talking about these Pokemon if I haven't already. Now, back to Crabrawler though, it only eats berries and fruit in general. Execute is a coconut, not a seed, so that makes perfect sense. This though goes against real life coconut crabs, as those are opportunistic omnivores, as many crabs tend to be. What this also means then is that Crabrawler may actually be the reason why Execute spreads throughout the lands and ensures that Executor here don't get too big and overpopulate. We can make this assumption because if it is hitting these tree Pokemon and knocking down their heads and not eating them, if that does happen, then it will technically result in them devolving as Execute, who fall down from an Executor, can't reattach and will instead need to find other Executes to form a group and begin the process all over again, which either they get eaten or it takes a while for them to become a full tree. Though it is a little awkward when 6 of them turn to 3 or 4 heads in their evolution, and I'm not sure how this species stays alive. Now, Crabrawler is definitely being eaten by a young goose whenever it does get the chance, which probably isn't often considering the type advantage, unless it's an ambush encounter. So when we look at this route, we have a couple of interactions going on. In summary, we have our Pokemon that are simply existing, getting their fill of food without interacting with anyone else or being hunted. This would include Abra, Smeargle, and potentially Drowsy, since it avoids other Pokemon unless they are asleep. Then we get into Cutiefly, who pollinates freely until a Pokemon such as Spearow or Ekans makes their way over to attack for a quick meal. Unfortunately, Meowth might try to just bat it around a little bit for fun, but it's able to get away, hopefully thanks to its type advantage. Then we get into the next tier, as while Rattata are being attacked and eaten by Ekans, Yungoos, and Meowth, they have low numbers here, and as such, just generally are avoiding the area to stay safe. Yungoos is also being hunted down by Ekans and Meowth, considering their lower population by comparison, but all of those Pokemon have their populations controlled by the Furfrou and Growlithe that we find in this area. The only other real interaction is actually between Makuhita and Crabrawler. This is because they're both punching trees within the area for their training or for berries respectively. And if Makuhita punches the wrong tree, either a Crabrawler will come jumping down, or it will come in running from the brush nearby, believing that Makuhita is trying to steal its berries. Either way, these two Pokemon are going to have a lot more interactions than you'd otherwise expect, since they are using the same available food source, or in the case of Makuhita, a little bit of extra training. Verdant Cavern, a cave with a great variety of plants thriving inside it. The light shafting in from above makes for a breathtaking sight. So, this cavern and any other totem-based area is going to be a bit interesting. These are by all means monocultures created by the totem Pokemon that protects the appropriate crystal, though that's only during the trial. So let's start by explaining what totem Pokemon really are. Totem Pokemon, otherwise known as leader Pokemon in direct translation, are a type of variant Pokemon that are battled at the end of every trial. In the core series, most totem Pokemon have been trained by their respective captain, providing them their role. Trial goers are expected to prove their strength to these Pokemon, and those who win are considered to have completed the trial and are rewarded with a Z Crystal. According to Wick, their size and aura are a result of being bathed in the energy spilled from Ultra Wormholes, the same kind that the Ultra Beasts use to store within their bodies, giving them a similar stat boost. This energy is further revealed in Pokemon Ultra Sun Ultra Moon to be Necrozma's light. And this is exactly why Necrozma and the other legendaries need to be properly considered for this analysis. They do affect Alola's ecosystem as a whole constantly. So considering the information we have covered, this means that totem Pokemon do naturally occur, but are essentially recruited and trained by trial captains to protect Z crystals and even the land itself, and in return are given a safe haven for their family. Otherwise, if this wasn't the case, they'd be rampaging all the time, and the Tapus would just defeat them, let's be real. We know this because the Tapus themselves keep peace and order through nature on the islands. They removed a kahuna from power, they draw their power from nature, and so much more that we will discuss in the future. But we'll save how they fit into the ecology section of all this for the end of each island that they reside on, as their influence greatly affects the island and other Pokemon. Back to Verdant Cavern, as we find either Gumshoos or Alolan Raticate as the totem Pokemon, all other Pokemon found in the cave during the trial are Yungoos and Rattata. Afterwards, the cave is filled with Zubat and Diglett, with only ambush encounters being the respective Pokemon for your version. This means that there is an extra level of intelligence from the totem Pokemon, as they essentially help set up the trial. This is not as strange as it seems, considering the trial captain's and Kahuna's relation to nature within Alola. While we can assume that the Zubat are taking refuge here, and the Pokemon overall may be fairly peaceful, let's discuss our 3 new Pokemon here anyway. Starting with our evolutions, Alolan Raticate. In Alola, Raticate has become heavier and darker due to its urban environment and higher calorie diet. That's because it is likely primarily eating human food or way more berries with a higher fat content is my guess. This variant uses its nest as a food stockpile and generally prefers to have the Alolan Rattata it commands to go out and forage for food while it remains in its nest and eats. It is selective in what it eats, however, only eating fresh, high-quality foods such as fruits is what it prefers. Rumor has it that a certain high-class restaurant even exploits this selectivity, bringing Raticate along to buy ingredients and letting it test new dishes. Each Alolan Raticate has its own territory, and disputes over food and feeding grounds happen frequently. Alolan Raticate and Rattata are not native to Alola, having been brought to the region via cargo ships, so they're little stowaways. Their populations grew drastically until Yungoos and Gumshoos were imported as a control measure. And now we see the relation between them, and even why these 2 Pokemon are the totems for either Ultra Sun or Ultra Moon. The problem with this is exactly what I stated earlier. You imported one Pokemon to deal with an invasive species, only for the imported Pokemon to become the invasive species. Yungoos and Gumshoos for Alolan Rattata and Raticate, my goodness. Now, this is something that has happened before, and it's a game of choosing the lesser of 2 evils in real life. This occurs more often, though, with insects or animals being introduced to cold weeds or plant-based invasive species and then becoming the invasive themselves. For example, the cane toad, as according to Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission states, cane toads were first introduced into Florida to control agricultural pests in sugarcane in the 1930s and 40s. It is believed that current populations are the result of escapees and releases by importers in the 1950s and 60s. So yeah, that's what's happening here with these 2 Pokemon lines, except it's 2 animals. And now we also know that Raticate here are likely eating plenty of fruits and probably nuts as well. Though onto Gumshoos, they hunt by patiently waiting along its prey's known travel routes and pouncing when the unsuspecting prey comes along. Due to its tenacious personality and ability to withstand intense hunger, it is able to wait for its prey for long periods without eating. Its favorite prey are Rattata and Raticate, but since Gumshoos is diurnal, it rarely encounters them. It is also known to prey on squavins. Once the sun sets, this Pokemon's stamina is depleted and it will fall asleep where it stands. It is not originally from Alola and was brought over to take care of Rattata outbreaks. So no new info other than Rattata and Raticate being their favorites. It just otherwise hunts rodents or any other smaller mammals and maybe birds. And the fact that they are diurnal just means that they are awake during the day, meanwhile the others are nocturnal. The last of the new trio being in this area is Alolan Diglett. In Alola, Diglett has developed 3 fine gold whiskers on its head from living in soil with high iron content and volcanic environment. These whiskers function as sensors and allow it to monitor its surroundings without coming above ground, though it will still occasionally poke its head out to see outside. The whiskers can also be used for communication, wobbling around to relay mood or motion. They stand straight up for anger, swinging around for happiness, and droop for sadness, or like little ears. Needing to be able to dig through Alola's volcanic rock, Alolan Diglett is notably stronger than its non-Alolan counterparts. In Alola, their tunneling activity has resulted in creating cultivated soil. This cultivated soil is good enough for agriculture, probably because they're pooping a lot in it as well. Cool. Not all poop should be used, by the way. There's a reason why, like, cow poop can be used to fertilize, and, like, you don't use dog poop. Anywho, the people in the Alola region are said to be very grateful for the actions of Alolan Diglett. However, they are still very small, tying with Klefki and Meltan as the shortest seal type. They can also be found in the coastal biome of Blueberry Academy's terrarium, where Alola's island life is simulated, which can be said about a lot of other Alola or variant Pokemon, so I will not continue mentioning that. And just to note, yes, the soils around volcanoes tends to be richer in iron. Let's take a small tangent to talk about that, as from the National Library of Medicine, volcanic eruptions generate large amounts of ash that can accumulate in soils and crops, thus causing permanent damage to the plant. As we have seen, volcanic ash has large amounts of oxides, aluminum oxide, silicon oxide, and iron oxide. So it can be stated that it has large amounts of aluminum. Again though, this area is peaceful, considering these are two distinctly different universes, Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon, in which the Rattata and Yungoos lines will not interact with each other, at least within the Verdant Cavern. So there isn't a lot to say here, but I would be willing to bet that the Yungoos line would likely be at least trying to eat the Diglett. Route 3, a steep mountain path surrounded by rocks where a lot of bird Pokemon live. Spearow, Mankey who eats fruit, Cutiefly, Bagon has a 1% chance as it is likely too preoccupied with jumping off of the cliffs here than eating. Rufflet fighting everything that it can in the vicinity and eating both berries and bugs. Volibee, who is a carrion bird that will also hunt down small mammals while loving to hunt Cubone, which are not in this area. Pretty much, honestly, anything that is weaker than it as per its information, by the way. Crabrawler, and then Hawlucha, who we deemed to be a carnivore thanks to it being a bird of prey. This ultimately means that there is nothing new here on Route 3 to talk about, but many of the Pokemon here are birds, as the little blurb stated. The reason for this is because it is a raised area. Birds like to use raised rock or trees as a safe place to hide, while also watching for any prey that they may enjoy far below. This is why you see many birds in tree lines. They wait for rain or the early morning, in which worms or bugs in general will stir the most, well, once the rain ends especially, all while they get a nice little safe perch until they can strike. It also saves them energy, so that way they're not searching by flying around a ton. This works incredibly well, as in the grass we do see Mankey, which they're probably not fighting, Cutiefly, Crabrawler in berry piles, and potentially any other small birds that our large predators can take a swing at. I would not be surprised if some of our animals here are taking advantage of each other. Mankey and Crabrawler might be fighting each other over fruits, as Mankey is going to be very territorial in terms of the fruit that it really loves, and if the birds can attack together and make this crab and monkey go away, then they're not only able to maybe eat the crab and fight off the monkey, but then get a nice meal from the berry pile left behind. Otherwise, Mankey's probably punching birds, because it's an angry little monster that it is. I love it. Melemele Meadow, a place where yellow flowers bloom in abundance. You can gather the nectar Oricorio loves to feed on here. This little meadow is a perfect little place of peace, full of Pokemon sucking up all the good earth nutrients or pollinating. Well, yes, we have the Caterpie line with Metapod not eating and just waiting for evolution. Butterfree has a 1% chance of appearing, eating up pollen and honey. Cottony floats around randomly, photosynthesizing, while Petalil does the same on the ground, not the floating part. Cutiefly is also here, alongside Flabebe, who has a symbiotic nature with the flower that they choose, keeping the flower alive and allowing it to photosynthesize, as it then provides Flabebe and its line with the nutrients that it needs. And then, Oricorio Pom-Pom style. Oricorio is an avian Pokemon that can change between 4 markedly different forms. The form it takes depends on the kind of nectar it consumes. All forms have a light pink beak, thin legs, and dark eyes with white pupils. The feet have 3 toes in front and 1 in back, and the beak curves downward. That beak is important for nectar. In its pom-pom style, residing on Melemele Island in Alola and in southern Paldea, Oricorio is primarily yellow. Most of its body is pale yellow, with a line of longer feathers around its waist like a skirt. Its lower body and short stubby tail are covered with short white feathers. Fluffy balls of darker yellow feathers cover the end of its wings like pom-poms, and similar, smaller puffs cover its ankles. In the center of its chest is yellow V-shaped marking, and there are fan-shaped markings on the sides of its eyes. The markings around its eyes are echoed by 3 large, pale yellow feathers on either side of its head, which are tipped with bright yellow. Now, I'm not going to go into that much detail with the rest of our Oricorios necessarily, but you're going to notice a markedly different, as it's stated, appearance physically, and honestly, habitually. Their personalities actually change a lot. Pom-pom style Oricorios dancing charges its feathers with static electricity. While charged, its feathers can be used to attack and unleash electric shocks. It will also use its dancing to cheer up people who are feeling glum, but will also use this as an opening to shock unsuspecting foes. I'm sorry, Oricorio, I'm not feeling great today. Bah! In Paldea, pom-pom style is popular with children due to its energetic, cheerful dance. However, it is hard to find in said region. What's interesting about these honey creepers is their relation to nature, the tapus, and the islands themselves. Because we understand that they feed on nectar, let's look at their similarly vibrant colored real-life counterparts to understand them better. According to MauiForestBirds.org, which runs a recovery project that can be donated to help protect birds in need, we get the following information specifically about the scarlet honey creeper. The iwi, which is the proper name for it, is a large nectarivorous. Why is that different from what I've been typing out? Oh no. Anywho, honey creeper about 6 inches in length. They are brilliant scarlet with black wings and tail. Their bill is long, deeply decurved, and peach colored. Immature are dull yellow with black spots. Bills are dusky brown at first and becomes brightly colored with age. The bright colors and unique bill make them one of the most recognizable honey creepers. Iwi are loud and raucous, and like, I don't know how to speak. Did you say it speak Polynesian or Hawaiian, or is that a dialect thing? I am ignorant when it comes to this. Are often aggressive to other species near nectar sources. Their long, decurved bill is thought to be adapted to feeding on long, tubular flowers like the endemic Hawaiian lobeloids. However, they will drink nectar from a wide variety of plant species, including some with very small flowers. Once one of the most common forest birds in the Hawaiian Islands, the iwi is now protected as a threatened species under the Endangered Species Act. As a side note, if YouTube gets me stupid, filthy rich, I know exactly where my money needs to go. There are so many places I need help like this, and I love studying nature in my time alongside Pokemon. So that's just where it's going to go. That's exactly where the excess money would ever go. But right now, I just got to pay bills. To put one more note on Oricorio, though, it may also be inspired by Darwin's finches, which also change and adapt to each island whenever they eat the nectar of the resident flowers. So yeah, while some species of honey creeper may eat more than just nectar, our Oricorio is a true nectarivore. This effectively means that every Pokemon in this meadow is photosynthesizing or pollinating through eating pollen and or nectar. This would explain the sheer abundance of flowers here, as they are well taken care of, especially by Flabebe in the area. This might even reduce potential conflict between Butterfree and Cutiefly, considering there are more than enough food sources for them to take advantage of and stay far away from each other. Now, we'll skip over Seaward Cave since it's all old Pokemon that we've discussed the interactions of before in previous editions, and move on. To streamline the waters around Melemele, both Kalae Bay and Melemele Sea are pretty much the same, with the exception to Shelter being in the bay, who simply uses its tongue as bait and lure so it can eat any fish that dares bite on it. In its place within the sea, we do find Clamperl, who waits for fish to swim by for it to bite onto, though the remaining Pokemon in this section is once again a selection of Pokemon we have talked about before. Tentacool eating anything that comes near it, but also being eaten by Wingull flying by. Finneon essentially bottom feeding and also being eaten by Wingull anytime it jumps above the water's surface. Magikarp being a bottom feeder, same goes for Luvdisc, and Corsola is filter feeding. The interesting part about Corsola, though, is that when it calls out for help with the SOS, it might call Marini its natural predator. Marini is able to regenerate any body part overnight except its head. The lost limbs have a very bitter, astringent flavor, and thus they cannot be eaten as food. Bruxish feeds on Marini, which in turn eats the branches of Corsola, except in Galar, where it has not learned to prey on them. Marini also eats broken off pincurchin spines despite the risk of being electrocuted. It uses the spike on top of its head to poison its prey, and uses its tentacles to either trap its prey or deal the final blow. In the Pokemon the Series Sun and Moon episode, The Sun, the Scare, the Secret Lair, it is seen attaching itself with all of its tentacles and releasing poison through its spines. The poison causes a numbness and intense itching. Marini live in groups and are found in beaches and the bottoms of oceans. Marini appears to be based on a crown of thorns starfish, a venomous starfish that preys on coral polyps, similar to how Marini preys upon Corsola. The pointy top of its head appears to be based on the crown. The lighter colors of its shiny variant in comparison to its normal colors may actually reference how juvenile crown of thorns starfish have brightly colored bodies that darken as they age. And according to Great Barrier Reef Foundation, while they are a native species, they eat large quantities of coral and can cause irreparable damage to our reef if left unchecked. Crown of thorns starfish are marine invertebrates that feed on coral, with each starfish eating up to 10 square meters a year. This allows us to safely state that Marini is strictly, at least in Alola, hunting down Corsola for its food, the poor, adorable thing that it is. And of course, when it calls out for help in its time of need, Marini, once again, waltzes in to double the trouble. The last addition, though, to Melemele Sea is Wishiwashi. An individual Wishiwashi is small, weak, and notably tasty. As a result, Wishiwashi has numerous natural predators, including humans, dugong, whalmer, wailord, wingull, and pelipper. While Wishiwashi are known to move in schools, they're more often seen alone. Wishiwashi also gather when confronting opponents. It can call in its friends by shining its eyes, seen as an SOS signal almost 25 miles or 40 kilometers away. That is an insane distance. Mind you, we can see, I think, in the dark, a candle a mile away, based on just human sight. So that, again, that is insane. Now, in its school form, Wishiwashi resembles a large fish, roughly formed from various smaller fish with glowing eyes. The people of Alola and Galar also fear Wishiwashi and call it the demon of its sea, or the sea, due to its school form. Even the fearsome Gyarados and Wailord are known to flee from it whenever it enters its school form. Wishiwashi assumes this form whenever it is in danger or is bullied. It can concentrate their powers when assembled, and its water gun is said to be more powerful than a hydro pump move. Should it get wounded in school form, it will split into a regular school before fleeing. So, while Wishiwashi here are not level 20, unless you fish on a bubbling spot, which is the level required for them to become their school form, we can take this one of two ways. One is by assuming there aren't enough Wishiwashi in the area to form their school form. The other way is by considering the idea that not all Wishiwashi will send out a signal for help. Maybe they didn't know how to cooperate with others, maybe they haven't learned how to call out for help, maybe they're too young, you name it. Either way, we can then make the assumption that not every Wishiwashi is going to form a full effective school form. If they could, then they would be an apex predator. Instead, it seems as though they are meant to take their place near the bottom and near the top of the food chain in Alola, which is why they have a number of natural predators. Essentially, every time you decided to try and eat one, you may only get a few before they form a full school. This is just an exaggerated form of what actually happens in real life. Fish will move in a school, jellyfish group together, zebras do the same. The reason why this happens is twofold. They confuse the predator while also doing their best to protect animals within their species that are deemed to be of higher value. Keep the young in the center, where it's most safe. Or alternatively, with jellyfish, there are so many of them that their survival method is literally just to keep making babies to the point where there are more being born than there are being eaten. When we specifically look at fish, though, we can read the following from Shed Aquarium. Individuals gathered make themselves seem like one large, intimidating creature that can scare off a predator. It can also be difficult for a predator to single out a fish among many that look nearly identical. A school's mesmerizing and precise turns and twists, all swimming in the same direction, at the same speed, at the same time, can confuse a bigger animal looking for a meal. So yeah, Wishiwashi is doing exactly that, but instead of just looking like a bigger fish, they conform to function as a singular, powerful unit. Now, to close out Melemele Island, we can speak about Tapu Koko, who resides in the ruins of conflict where life is tested. Tapu Koko is able to pull its mask together and hide its upper body inside, creating the impression of a stylized rooster shape. This Pokemon is called the deity or the guardian deity of Melemele Island. It's known for protecting its home, but it is fickle and will not necessarily help people in need. However, it is very curious and may come to play or battle with Pokemon or people that interest it. It is able to store electricity by closing itself inside the shells of its arms. It does this by summoning thunderclouds. It has an explosive temper, but it instantly forgets what enraged it in the first place. Due to this, Tapu Koko has been referred to as a malevolent deity should it get provoked. It can move lightning fast in order to confuse enemies that fight it. It is known to defend its home from Ultra Beasts, as all of our Tapus are known to do. As seen in Revealing the Stuff of Legend episode, Tapu Koko and the other Tapu can transform a Z-Ring into a Z-Power Ring. Furthermore, in battling the beast within, it was shown to have the ability to transport others into Ultra Space when working together with another Tapu Koko. Now, it and the other guardian deities are the only known Pokemon capable of learning the move Nature's Madness, otherwise named Nature's Wrath. They're also the only known Pokemon capable of using the Z move Guardian of Alola. Now, when we look at the Tapus, they draw their energy from nature itself. Some of the evidence we get of this is through the shiny Tapu Koko we meet in the anime. The shiny Tapu Koko first appeared in Battling the Beast Within, where it assisted its regularly colored counterpart in transporting Ash and Pikachu to the Ultra Ruin during Ash's battle with the latter. Dia is a character that later revealed that due to the damage caused by Guzzlord, Tapu Koko fled Alola, preventing the use of Z-moves. But when we look at the games, we find that the land was polluted heavily before Guzzlord had even arrived, and that would also be when Tapu Koko fled. Either way, both scenarios involve the destruction of nature within Alola, which results in Tapu Koko fleeing. And to put a final pin in this, the quartet we have of the Tapus are called the Land Spirit Pokemon. So without nature itself, they would be gone. The protection of the island would be gone, Z-moves would go, and the ecosystem as a whole will fall. Their influence has even created electric seeds, or at least Tapu Koko's influence has done so, which in turn has influenced the flowers on this island, allowing the yellow flowers and their nectar to create the matching electric type Oricorio. They are truly vital to the ecosystem within Alola. And with that, we can move on, taking the Mantine Surf trip to Akala Island. Akala Island, in the northeast of the archipelago, I did it again, contains Alola's only active volcano in Wheeler Volcano Park. It also has the most settlements of the 4 natural islands. Its largest city, Heihei City, boasts several huge resort hotels such as Ahano Grand Resort, which has its own beach and golf course. A notable Akala Island landmark is Brooklet Hill, which has cascading waterfalls that give off the impression of a terraced field. The island also contains a rainforest known as Lush Jungle. Starting with Route 4, which is a route that connects Heihei City and Paniola Town, the gentle touch of nature is abundant here. At night we have Rattata and Eevee, which can actually SOS for an Umbreon, so of course I cannot pass up talking about an evolution given the chance, otherwise I feel like y'all would riot. Umbreon's evolution is the result of Eevee being exposed to the moonlight, which altered its genetic structure. Umbreon's yellow rings glow when it is excited, such as when it leaps to attack or when exposed to the moon's aura, which fills it with a mysterious energy. Umbreon hunts at night, and as such, has well-developed eyes that can spot a prey even in darkness. Its black fur helps it blend into the night while waiting for the right moment to pounce. When it does, its rings emit a dim yet ominous glow, and it lunges for the prey's throat before eating it. That is at verbatim. That is not my flowery language. Whenever angered or agitated, Umbreon sprays poisonous sweat secreted from its pores into the offender's eyes to protect itself, and that is because it was originally supposed to be a poison-type Pokemon. Now, it primarily specializes in defensive prowess, and as mentioned in Pokemon Sleep, it is known to be difficult to find while it sleeps during the night, mainly because it blends in. And actually, the main reason is due to Umbreon being a nocturnal Pokemon. So it's just around during the day, moving around, it's sleeping during the day, running around at night, I'm sorry. So, you might know by now that Eevee and its line are based on dogs, cats, foxes, and a little bit of rabbits as well. Mainly, they're actually supposed to be a creature that you would vaguely see in your dreams. Though, what's fun about them is that almost all of them are omnivores, and their social nature just means that they're friendly with each other and protective over Eevee itself. Meanwhile, during the day, we have Eevee again, but these specific Eevee call upon Espeon for help. Espeon's velvety fur is so sensitive that it can sense minuscule shifts in the air, allowing it to predict the weather and its enemies' thoughts and movements. When doing so, the tip of its tail quivers. The gem on Espeon's forehead glows when it unleashes psychic energy from the gem and darkens when all of the built-up energy has been exhausted. Espeon builds up its psychic power by bathing in the sunlight. As such, it does not handle battles at night well. As mentioned in Pokemon Sleep, Espeon is known to sleep deeply, during the night. Espeon shows extreme loyalty to any trainer that it considers worthy, even being said to have awakened its psychic powers from its desire to protect its trainer. Some sources, however, theorize that its powers were born from its need to keep itself safe. Why not a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B, a little bit of protecting Eevee, This, though, is where it does get a little bit odd. Because you can say that Espeon photosynthesizes in a way, and while I'm kind of willing to believe that, its genetic structure hasn't actually changed enough to support this like Leafeon's genetic structure did. As such, I propose that its psychic energy is built up by sunlight, but it needs to eat like any other Eevee or Eeveelution. My reasoning for this is because it can use up all the psychic power built up without dying in the process, likely meaning that they are, in fact, two separate energy sources. One for psychic energy, one for metabolic energy. As such, it's probably hunting just like Umbreon is, and just being an omnivore. Though, to follow, there are Yungoos in small amounts, and Igglybuff, although it has singing abilities, right? It is not able to sing for long periods of time due to its undeveloped vocal cords. And I say all this because I actually haven't covered Igglybuff before. It often gets a sore throat from singing too frequently, and when it gets praised, its singing slowly becomes better and better. They tend to live in the grasslands close by freshwater streams, uses water from the streams to gargle in its sore throat. As mentioned in Pokemon Sleep, it is known to bounce around while sleeping, though on rare occasions, it practices its singing as it dreams. The whole Jigglypuff line is weird in terms of diet. They're basically just balls of air that can sing and expand without much issue as they evolve into their later forms and continually improve. And especially since we kind of just learned that they just gargle the water, not necessarily drink it, and everything else I've learned about them, I have always proposed that this line of Pokemon just does not need to eat. I will also note now, since I haven't mentioned it before, usually baby Pokemon within Alola will call upon their parent for help or other baby Pokemon. I also suspect that with these living balloons, they aren't going to be hunted often at all, except by inexperienced predators that don't realize that these are just skin balloons. This is supported by them having the highest encounter rates tied with only Lillipup. Speaking of the dog, it appears roughly a quarter of the time during the day, but is out more at night as it's on the prowl. Same goes for Pick-a-Peck, oddly enough, though you could surmise that you are running into sleeping Pick-a-Peck at night. At all times of day, though, we also find Grubbin and our other high encounter rate Pokemon by comparison, Mudbray. Mudbray can be kept happy by giving it time to frolic in and consume mud. Mudbray's diet consists of eating dirt in order to create mud, and then regurgitates the mud in order to cover itself in it, so it's not actually eating it. Mudbray's mud won't dry out, even when exposed to the sun for long periods of time. Denying it this will cause it to become stressed and disobey its trainer. This Pokemon boasts immense strength for its size, and is able to drag or carry loads up to 50 times its own weight. Mudbray are known to be skilled at using mud. The mud that collects around its hooves enhances its grip power, and notably, it allows Mudbray to travel through rough terrains without slipping. Because it was hunted nearly to extinction when it lived all over the world, it was believed for a time to run wild only in Alola. Despite this, Mudbray have been seen roaming in Galar and Paldea, suggesting that its population is slowly recovering from near extinction. Now, I understand people eat horses, and maybe, not in Alola, now that I realize it, but in Galar and in Paldea, there might have been a crisis in which they had no choice but to eat their horses. I'm willing to eat any ethically sourced animal, even a giraffe, as long as it's, again, ethically sourced. I want them treated incredibly well. The problem with it, though, is why near extinction if it wasn't due to a big, horrible event, in which case there was like a food shortage. Luckily, here in Alola, they are seen as incredibly vital to the infrastructure of Alola, so they were kept safe. Now, you might ask, why is it vital? Well, let's take a sneak peek at Mudsdale, who doesn't appear here, but tells us it will mix dirt and saliva to create a special mud with resistance to both wind and water. The mud is also harder than even stone. Because of its unique qualities, the walls of some old houses were coated with Mudsdale mud. Mudsdale is highly treasured for both physical labor and pottery made from its high-quality mud. And to my understanding, Hawaii in real life does not have an abundance of clay that is readily available. This is why archaeology in the area is vastly different compared to other places that have had plenty of pottery to recover, or uncover, however you want to say that. The solution is simply, within Alola, to have a horse here chew up the ground and turn that clay into a readily available resource, then making it so that Alola has more resources of archaeology that we can dig into from the past, which is really cool. Now, I'm not going to keep noting as we move on that Crabrawler is around, but you can assume that it appears on most routes. Basically, as long as you can find a berry pile, you can find a Crabrawler. I just realized I didn't mention what our donkey is eating, and I'm 99% sure. Actually, you know what? Let me double check. It is a donkey that turns into a horse, so it's going to be eating vegetation, whatever vegetation and fruits that it can really get, in addition to probably any hay, grass, shrubs, forbs, you name it. It's just going to be eating away. It's an herbivore. There isn't a lot to break down on this route, but I will note that there is a high water table, meaning that the area is well saturated, and would explain why we find Mudbray here. How do I know that there is a high water table? Well, when we look at the one place where there is an abundance of water on this route, we see it is at the highest elevation, and that little pond looks pretty freaking full to me, meaning that there is a good chance we simply have a high water table, since everything below that elevation point would have to be saturated with water for that little pond to fill in the first place. You can thank my college classes for that bit of information. Now, I'm just going to at least briefly mention Pikachu Valley, because to my understanding, the whole place is naturally occurring, and in the anime, it is way more visually shown to be abundant with Pikachu that really emphasize it to be a place where Pikachu gather, as it says. Though we also find Slowpoke and Pikumuku here, you can't have any actual wild encounters. The guide you find here also jokes about the trailer that Pikachu seemingly endlessly exit from may actually be connected to an ultra wormhole. Though the joke turns into nervous laughter by the very end, as he's like, haha, but that can't be the case, right? Right? Route 5, a winding route with many branching paths and ledges. It is quite challenging for people traveling on foot. We see many of our previous Pokemon here, Caterpie, Metapod, Butterfree, Lillipup, Pikipek, Grubbin, all appearing at all times at a consistent rate. But then, we add in Fomantis. In order to achieve evolution, Fomantis stores up energy gathered by photosynthesis. It is nocturnal, so during the day, it spreads its leaves wide to catch the sunlight. During the night, it spends its time searching for a new spot to sleep for the next day. It will not stay in the same spot for more than a day due to the danger involved in doing so. If anything bothers it while it is gathering sunlight, Fomantis will fiercely attack it. The reason is that Fomantis hates its naps being disturbed. Don't we all? When regularly exposed to sunlight, it grows up with vivid coloration. Though it excels at long-range attacks, it will rarely use those that require it to use its stored photosynthetic energy. Fomantis can give off a sweet and refreshing scent. Bug Pokemon, like Cutiefly, are known to gather near it due to its scent. Trainers who own Fomantis tend to give it a flower pot, allowing it to sunbathe in peace. Now, Fomantis is very much a grass-type plant Pokemon, like an actual plant. It gets its energy through photosynthesis strictly, and is a Pokemon that practices the art of mimicry, something we often see in the wild in fantastic ways. But we'll discuss that more later with its evolution. For now, let's just know that Pick-a-Peck, Caterpie, and Butterfree will be Pokemon that bother Fomantis the most, especially Caterpie if it does realize that Fomantis is in fact a plant and not a bug. Though I doubt that would go well for the little caterpillar, even with the type advantage that it does have, and it'll just get cut up. Brooklet Hill, the best fishing spot in the Alola region. Its series of cascading waterfalls make it look like a terrace field. Get ready for some more totem explanations, just because I want to talk about the totem before the rest of Brooklet Hill. I'm also getting a little bit of mini flashbacks because I recently completed an Ultra Moon Blind Nuzlocke, and I thought I'd be up against a Wishy-Washy only for an Araquanid to come in and take the life of nearly my entire team. To go watch that. Anywho, there are Wishy-Washy here. Masquerain can be called in as an ally, but what's interesting about them is that Masquerain do eat bugs. As such, there is a good chance that Masquerain may at least be feeding on our other friend here, Dewpider. Dewpider can only breathe oxygen dissolved in water, so the bubble over their head allows them to breathe on land. Dewpider uses the sticky silk it creates to form a sturdy water bubble that will rarely burst. Additionally, the bubble protects its head and can be slammed into both prey and enemies. This thing just headbutts people like an anime character for all of its attacks. It's the strongest attack in all of the anime, let's be real here. If two Dewpider meet, they compare bubbles, and the one with the smaller bubble will move out of the way. It supports the water bubble that envelops its head with 3 of its legs. Considering it talks about prey but doesn't exactly state a diet, let's talk about the diving bell spider in which this Pokemon is based on. Thank you to wildlifetrust.org for the following. The water spider lives underwater, building a bell-shaped web between underwater plant stems. It can be spotted as it comes to the water surface to trap air in the hairs on its body, which it takes down to fill the web, or diving bell, hence its other common name of diving bell spider. It lives in this large air bubble during the day and hunts at night. Mating takes place within the web or cheat, and the female builds a special egg chamber in which she lays and guards her eggs. Water spiders can be found in weedy lakes and ponds and very slow-flowing streams. They may consume mosquito larvae, Daphnia, small crustaceans, water mites, mayfly nymphs, and phantom midge larvae. But none of those are here. In fact, fish and frogs are predators of diving bell spiders, so where do we go from here? Well, we use what we discussed previously. Wishy-Washy is effectively the bottom and the top of the food chain. As such, inexperienced Wishy-Washy get eaten by Dewpider. The Wishy-Washy that do survive and are able to form their school form are then able to fight against the Dewpider together. Though, due to the back and forth pressure that is now happening, this then causes Dewpider to evolve into a Araquanid to avoid predation in return, and then it just goes back and forth. It's the life cycle, baby. And while we're here, let's talk about Araquanid, who also turns out to be our totem Pokemon. Araquanid uses a bubble around its head as both a weapon and a protective shield. The bubbles it launches will have a sticky effect. It will headbutt enemies with it, and small Pokemon can be sucked in and drowned. That's terrifying. That's genuinely terrifying. This is a nearly 6 foot tall or nearly 2 meter tall spider that is headbutting people. Oh, wait, I realize I'm wrong. I'm sorry. Your average Araquanid is that size. The totem Araquanid, or the totem Pokemon in general, are typically 2 to 3 times larger than the normal Pokemon, making this specific Pokemon as a totem a whopping 12 feet or 4 meters tall at minimum. By comparison, that means that this thing is the height of a 1-story house. It could headbutt you on your roof. Maybe you could ask it to clean the gutters if it's nice, but hey, if you aren't scared of or awed by this thing yet, it gets a little more interesting, for lack of a better word. Foes that Araquanid traps inside these bubbles will lose consciousness before getting torn apart by Araquanid's gnashing jaws. At least you're unconscious for the horrifying event. Subdued prey can also be stored inside when the arachnid is not hungry. However, it will also bring weaker Pokemon and valuable items into the bubble for protection. Notably, it carries around its Dewpider children while feeding them with food within the head bubble. Yeah, so the diet didn't change. It's just a bigger Pokemon now, and it's probably just eating whatever comes near it. It's probably an opportunistic omnivore at this point, or opportunistic carnivore, I apologize. Though, outside of the totem's den, we have Paris appearing during the day and eating tree roots. This is a great place for it due to the humidity brought on by all this heat and the abundance of water. We get Psyduck again, Poliwag feasting on seaweed and pond scum, Wingull possibly trying to eat them and our bugs here, Surskit, who appears only during the night while Dewpider appear during the day, likely because of their predatory nature against each other. Then at night, we have another mushroom, Morello. Morello likes dark, damp areas such as dense jungles, but changes locations every night to avoid depriving the plants in any one area of too many nutrients. In addition to locomotion, its roots are also used to communicate with other Morello. When in danger, it scatters spores that burst into bright and glittering sparks. The pulsing light of the spores can induce drowsiness. It is rumored that once when a group of Morello were disturbed and all threw out their spores at once, a plane passing overhead suffered a near brush with disaster. Yikes. The caps on Morello's head are a delicacy for Pokemon living in the forest and can grow back overnight. So, what's interesting is that Morello is more than just a regular decomposer thanks to the anime. In fact, Morello can draw energy from living creatures, and through doing so, it will even evolve with enough energy taken. This doesn't necessarily directly kill other Pokemon or people though, it basically just drains what energy you do have and makes you hungry, in which the episode showed that Ash just needed to chow down on food to build up more energy for Morello to take, and he turns out just fine. Morello and its evolution could also give that energy back, and even give it to plants in the area to revitalize them. So while it isn't actively hunting other Pokemon, if you do harm the environment that it loves or it needs the energy, it likely won't hesitate to come after you, or it might just go after any Pokemon that are asleep at night and just take away their energy as necessary. It is also interesting to know that they are providing a food source to other Pokemon, the caps being eaten, and they'll be perfectly fine. And I will note now, for future notes that we are going to find out about Parasect and Shiinotic, there it is, Shiinotic, that those two have a very negative relationship with each other, competitive even, so that is probably beginning here with Morello and Paris. As we move on by fishing in this area, we find aggressive Goldeen eating pretty much everything and attacking other fish, Magikarp, Feebas at a 1% encounter rate as it bottom feeds and is left completely alone, and then our invasive and very aggressive Basculin, who will attempt to eat everyone else other than that Feebas. Within the den, after completing the trial, we do find Tentacool, Wingull, Finian, Wishiwashi, and Alamamala, who is actually feeding on Tentacool thanks to info we know on the Mola Mola fish. Outside of this, we're able to quickly move on. Lush Jungle, a heavily wooded tropical rainforest. It's famous for producing ingredients for delicious meals. Welcome to the next trial site. During the trial itself, we get Kecleon eating bugs and playing hide and seek, Sudowoodo camouflaging and scraping up nutrients, Fomantis, and then Comfey. Comfey produces thin blue thread-like vines that come from the back of its head and may even have several flowers attached to it. The flowers are attached to rounded stems of the same color as the vine. When not in use, these vines curl into a detailless dome shape at the top of the head, which is wrapped around by the green crest. Comfey are usually seen with flowers that are white, purple, red, and blue in all visual media. However, each Comfey wear different flowers that will never wither and give off a unique scent. The flowers can also be thrown at enemy Pokemon to create an opening to either flee or attack. However, it feels uneasy without flowers. Comfey spread oil from their body along these flower rings, changing the flowers so that they emit a soothing fragrance that affects both Comfey and its allies. This aroma can also help with the treatment of people in Pokemon hospitals and Pokemon centers. As mentioned in Pokemon Sleep, Comfey is known to sleep with a smile and a flower close to its face. The flower is said to have a scent that helps it sleep comfortably, and it is one of the shortest Pokemon in existence. Now, its vine is also said to be highly nutritious, and considering the flowers attached to it and how they never wither, we might be able to safely assume that we have a symbiosis here similar to Floette and by keeping the flowers alive, they somehow achieve a form of photosynthesis even without that good green leaf from the flowers themselves, though Comfy here does have green coloration on it, and as such, somehow, whether it be by Comfy's power or through the flowers themselves, they're able to provide essential energy and nutrients to each other. Now, Comfy likely doesn't have much to worry about other than maybe some pollinators getting too close or maybe Pokemon that really want to eat some flowers. Otherwise, it can likely freely exist without worry. Though, we now get to talk about our evolution of Fomantis and the total Pokemon for Lush Jungle, Lurantis. Lurantis both looks and smells like a flower, a trait that it exploits to lure foes in for a surprise attack. By gathering light, Lurantis can fire laser beams using its sickle-like arms, and these beams are strong enough to cleave thick metal plates. Its brilliant coloration and elegant moves have earned it acclaim as the most glamorous grass-type Pokemon. However, it does disguise itself as a bug Pokemon for protection. Maintaining its appearance requires detailed grooming. If a trainer does a good job for caring of it, Lurantis will have an easier time trusting them than a lazy trainer and have gorgeous, brilliant colors. And in Generation 7, Solar Blade was its signature move. And what a signature move that is. Just slicing us up with incredible looking power. Now, it is not hunting other Pokemon, and it is still performing photosynthesis to some degree. Lurantis has simply adapted to be able to protect itself better is all. This is reminiscent of the Orchid Mantis in real life, though that is an actual mantis that will cut you and will eat whatever insects dare to come near it. It mimics, as you would guess, orchids, but they don't smell like the flower. Simply, it looks like a flower in order to attract prey to it. So in all reality, this little group of trial Pokemon are peaceful, even if they weren't a part of the trial. But how about we look at the rest of Lush Jungle and see how it is so well maintained, how it's so lush and full of vibrant life. Starting with the central and north area, we find Metapod Paris, Pinsir, who is eating other bugs and feeding on honey and nectar, Hoot Hoot eating bugs and small mammals if there were small mammals here, Bonsley, Fomantis, Morlul, Comfy, and a slew of new Pokemon. We begin with a Pokemon whose first form you can't even find within Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon, Steenie. Meaning, yes, we're going to talk about Bounsweet too, since I can break my rules a little bit to properly discuss creatures and help fill things out better. Now, Bounsweet is a Pokemon who exudes a delicious smell from its entire body, which has made it popular with people of the Alola region. This scent has a calming effect on people, so they are often used as living hair fresheners. Let me just put one up in my car here. However, its sweet scent has also caused it to be swallowed whole or collected by other Pokemon, especially Toucannon and Greedent. It is too sweet for human consumption, but its sweat can be used to make a juice. That bothers me still. Bounsweet was highly valued by humans in the past in a time when sweets were rare. While fleeing in danger, it skips along in a way that does not convey its desperation. As a result, no one comes to help it. It has been known to drive away enemies, though, by rotating its calyx, but it becomes dizzy afterwards. It is based on the Mangosteen, which is a female-only species, similar to how the Pokemon itself is a female-only species. Now, it doesn't state anything about photosynthesis, nor does it have any chlorophyll ability, so let's look at Steenie, who is actually here to see if we can find any necessary information. While it has a delectable fragrance, this Pokemon also has a tomboyish personality that can make it hard to get along with. Weak. Steenie's scent is popular in antiperspirants used by humans and helps others feel invigorated. Steenie's peeled rind can be used for stomach pains. Its calyx has hardened, allowing it to play with other Pokemon without worrying about being damaged. However, the leaves spin as Steenie moves and often strike nearby objects. It apparently does not care what it hits, and even uses the calyx as a form of attack. Foes are struck with the leaves first, then kicked by one of Steenie's equally hard legs. It also uses those legs to protect itself from its natural predator, which is not here in Alola, Corvisquire. Now, again, still no diet, even if we look at Serena. As such, despite no direct evidence other than it being stated that the hard calyxes are essentially leaves for this Pokemon, we will assume that they just photosynthesize. Though this is very interesting, as the reason we don't find Bounsweet here is likely because of at least one other Pokemon we find here being Trumbeak. And also a couple of the other ones, which probably throw it around, but we'll get there. And while yes, it is stated that Toucannon specifically loves to collect Bunsweet, Trumbeak may have been the start to it developing that habit. Trumbeak feeds on berries and stores the seeds in its beak so it can fire them off in a burst when encountering both enemies and prey. New plants grow from the seeds that Trumbeak scatters. The cries that it makes with its beak prove to be very noisy to its neighbors, and it lives in areas dense with trees. What a perfect little scenario that we have here. So the Trumbeak Bunsweet looks like a berry, smells like a berry, and as such, it must be a berry. It would then attempt to eat Bounsweet and may or may not succeed, but consistent attacks on the cute little Bounsweet would only result in pressure and it evolving into Steenie. What's also really fun about the Pokemon we have seen so far is that they are all otherwise coexisting within the jungle, to some capacity. Now yes, Hoot Hoot and Pinsir may eat a few bugs, but otherwise, we have photosynthesizers, Morlul, who is keeping balance of life energy and reviving trees. Even Trumbeak is attacking with seeds, which will inadvertently help spread seeds throughout the forest and help it grow as it did state, preventing a monoculture from appearing and allowing it to grow lush. And because I have said monoculture twice now without actually explaining, a monoculture is one culture, when a singular species takes over an entire area. This is incredibly bad for any environment, and in some cases, such as when, let's say, streets in Wisconsin were lined with Dutch elms, when Dutch elm disease came through, it spread rapidly from tree to tree thanks to the monoculture of Dutch elms in such a small area, and killed them all. The only solution was basically let them die, and you only plant, let's say, a Dutch elm, then an oak, then a maple, then a Dutch elm, then an oak, and then like an aspen. I don't know, man. I didn't do that. All I know is that you want to have species variation. This can also happen with not just plants, but animals as well, with things such as chronic wasting disease. So, yes, it is important that we are getting prey, predator, and even seed spreaders here. We need variation. Moving on, we get Oranguru and Pissimian. Oranguru is a solitary Pokemon who spends its life deep in the forest, meditating high up in the trees. While it is not normally active, it will provide food to hungry Pokemon and give medicine to injured ones. It has even been known to use human tools or items, including Pokeballs. It has a lofty attitude and will give other Pokemon orders. This can make them difficult Pokemon for trainers to handle. Ancient people actually thought Oranguru were people and called them the people of the forests. Oranguru does not get along with others of its kind, often battling out their wits for superiority. It's like a bunch of people just typing in the comment section sometimes, just telling me what I should do. Oh my goodness, what a crazy life. I like constructive criticism. I do. So if you have proper constructive criticism, yay! If you're gonna tell me not to say actual science or have emotion and rambling a little bit, now, I don't want to be number 5, Burger King foot lettuce. I don't want to be that, I'm sorry. It will also occasionally venture to the beach to match wits with Slowking. Now, it doesn't state an actual diet, but considering it is an orangutan, according to Orangutan Appeal UK, wild orangutans must forage for up to 6 hours a day in order to find enough food in the rainforest to survive. Although their diet is made up of about 60% fruit, like durian, they also eat leaves, tree bark, roots, insects, and sometimes even small mammals, like slow loris. Every time I read about the loris being eaten, I laugh a little bit, and I'm a horrible person for that. I really shouldn't laugh at it, but I just imagine them getting cartoonishly popped into the mouth of an orangutan as if it was just popcorn. No chewing, nothing else, just Either way, I'm gonna make the argument that Oranguru strictly only eats fruits and veggies. Well, okay, maybe that and some bark, roots, and leaves. Pretty much anything excluding other Pokemon, considering it actively seems to help any other Pokemon. And my other reasoning for this is because in their SOS call, Trumbeak will come to its aid, a Pokemon that eats berries and spreads their seeds through its attacks, as we've recently discussed. This would be a perfect Pokemon to instruct, as Oranguru can get Trumbeak to leave seeds of its favorite berries nearby and then help them grow. This also may be a big help to keeping the forest so healthy and even keep other Pokemon here fed. On the other hand, we do have Pissimian. This Pokemon creates troops of 20 to 30 members. Each troop has a leader that picks 10 of the strongest members to search for food. Pissimian tend to get into territorial disputes with Ambipom in their search for comfortable trees, in which they win half of the time? You're telling me roided out Zaboomafoo, who has excessive numbers, Ambipom probably does too, only wins half of the time against Ambipom, even with the type advantage. It's not the first time we've seen something like that. To be fair, Executes can actually push off Pidgeotto from attacking them, but it's still a little wild to me sometimes when we find this information out. Ambipom aren't even in this area, but I couldn't just ignore that. Now, with the Passimian Pokemon, its battle strategy involves throwing berries at opponents, hard ones for damage and soft ones to obscure vision, and confusing opponents by throwing the berry to other troop members. A troop's leader is a member that can throw these berries the farthest. Through rigorous training, the troop improves its coordination, teamwork, and skill in handling berries. Some Passimian are unable to handle the intensity and flee from the troop. In place of a troop leader, a captive Passimian looks to its trainer for leadership. If its trainer has poor form when throwing Pokeballs, it will refuse to obey. Your wrist is weak. Leave our troop, trainer. Now, joking aside, this means that Oranguru and Passimian serve the same purpose, though they kind of do it by different means, since Passimian will simply take the berries and chuck them at enemies while also eating other berries. In the end, this still helps spread and cultivate seeds, since they always need a supply of berries for fighting and a supply of berries for eating. They also will call upon Chumbeak for help in their SOS, which could just be from them knowing that they just toss berries randomly. It's kind of a toss-up how their connections work. Our last Pokemon, though, that only appears as special allies in weather, but I can't resist their presence here, especially as I'm sure someone would understandably wonder about them, would be Gumi, who appears in rain, who are opportunistic omnivores, though because of them being incredibly weak, they are likely just being a detrivore here, and the other Pokemon was a surprising find, actually, being a wild cast form. You know, the creature made in Hoenn by humans now has a population out here in Alola far, far away. Though that might be because they may have escaped during some weather studies. Oops. Castform is an artificial Pokemon that changes appearance and attitude based on the weather. Its body is made of cells exactly like those of water molecules, causing its cellular structure to be chemically altered by temperature and humidity. Though not of its free will, Castform uses this ability to protect its tiny body. In its normal form, it resembles a plain gray cloud with a single wisp extending from the top of its head. Or, if you grab the H2O molecule, it matches up pretty dang well. Regardless of the form it takes, it will always have a large spherical head and a lighter colored mask-like marking over its eyes. Various experiments were conducted to change its form in artificial conditions, but all have failed. There is no diet stated, but considering it is literally a collection of living water molecules, we can assume that it just drinks water to restore itself if necessary, and otherwise just gets to exist freely without needing to eat or be attacked. They don't really serve a role in this environment, to my knowledge, unless Oranguru decides to use it as a weather radar. I don't know. But there is one more part to this jungle that may bring the entire microclimate we have here together: the cave. For while the levels jump high within the cave, I still find it vital to talk about them. We see Golbat draining Pokemon of blood, and 3 Pokemon I have not been able to talk about yet. Starting with Larvesta, who appears with a 1% chance. Larvesta can shoot fire from its 5 horns as a defensive tactic to intimidate predators or to scare prey. It has been seen using the fire that it shoots from these horns to even fly. Larvesta's flames can reach up to almost 5,500 degrees Fahrenheit in temperature. The horn's flames can cut through even sheets of iron. It lives at the feet of volcanoes, though people of ancient times once believed that Larvesta nested on and fell from the sun. Some people still say that it was born from the sun, though in ancient times it was known as the larva that stole the sun and emissary of the sun. Ooh, that sounds like sacrilege against a certain Solgaleo that we find here. Oops. Despite this, Larvesta is considered a burden due to it causing constant forest fires. When it evolves into Volcarona, its body becomes enveloped in flames akin to a cocoon. Now, there are 2 things to talk about here. With its diet, even Volcarona does not state a diet, and yes, it can SOS Volcarona, who I will now go over since this is the first place where it naturally occurs. Volcarona releases burning scales from its wings to engulf the battlefield in a sea of fire. Volcarona's flames are said to provide a replacement for the sun when the atmosphere is dark with volcanic ash, and some legends claim that it hatched from a cocoon of raging flames to save people and Pokemon in freezing climates. It was feared as the rage of the sun by ancient people, and it was even worshipped as a deity of fire in some places. They even referred to it as the embodiment of the sun. Volcarona's shrine in Relic Castle remains as a testament to the respect it commanded. Despite being worshipped in cold regions, it is unpopular in hot regions due to its burning body, and it is also considered dangerous due to how it scatters hot burning scales, which can rob the surrounding air of oxygen. Very interesting. Then we do find it here of all places. The last place was in the desert. But before we pick that apart, let's just figure out its diet. The Atlas moth caterpillar, in which it and its moth are what the Larvesta line is based on, eat the leaves of various plants only. Only leaves. When they do become moths, they lose their mouth. And this is not a joke or exaggeration. They straight up stop having mouths and do not consume anything anymore, as many moths actually do, simply surviving purely off of what energy they gained in their caterpillar stage. This checks out, as we don't really see a mouth on either of these Pokemon, to be fair. That would also help explain why the Volcarona and Relic Castle in Unova was able to live for so long by itself. It just doesn't have to eat, and there is only one there. Might have also been the reason why people died in Relic Castle, because they had the doors closed. Oxygen got just basically got rid of the oxygen, burned it up in that area. Yeah. Now, the other reason why this Pokemon is important among the next two that we speak of is because this shows a source of heat. But it's not enough by itself to help produce a jungle. It takes more than heat, which Alola already has an abundance of, to help create a good jungle. It takes nutrients, the correct placement in relation to, let's say, a mountain. You have to be on the right side, and all of the other Pokemon we previously talked about have to work together in their own way to help cultivate the flora here, directly or indirectly, as we have discussed. And that's how we are shown that even without looking at the map, we know Lush Jungle is on the side of a volcano, or at least a mountain. But in this case, Wheeler Volcano Park is specifically here. As we now get to talk about both Salandit, its SOS Salazzle, and Alolan Dugtrio, who are all found within this cave. Salandit is found around volcanoes or arid rocky environments. From the marking at the base of its tail, it can emit both toxic gas and flames. The gas is created by burning body fluids and has a sweet odor that causes dizziness. However, bug Pokemon are attracted to the scent and are common prey. The female could also release pheromones that attract males of all species, including humans. Additionally, these pheromones may cause opponents to be controlled by this Pokemon's will. Because of this, male Salandit offers its food to females, leaving it malnourished and unable to evolve. While it is not a powerful Pokemon, it is able to unbalance opponents with its cunning techniques, though it does have difficulty with Spinda since that Pokemon is already constantly off balance. A fantastic poison fire type that I would love to see have a male evolution if it is properly separated from its female counterpart. But to break this down, it seems like while bugs are the primary source of food, it may eat berries and any other Pokemon it can defeat. Thus is why Spinda is brought up, making it an opportunistic omnivore that relies on its body fluid odor. It's probably urine or something similar to it. Let's talk about Salazzle now, which I'm sure won't make anything worse. Salazzle can be found deep in caves with a reverse harem of male Salandit. Simps. Salazzle, my goodness, I'm stumbling my words, I'm sorry, emits a poisonous gas that contains sweet-smelling pheromones, which attract the males. The gas could also be diluted to make perfumes. It forces the male Salandit and has attracted to serve it and bring it food, and those that are unable to are punished with flaming slaps. Salazzle fight with each other over male Salandit. The winner is the one with the most male Salandit in its harem. As shown by the core series games since Generation 8, it normally stands and walks on all fours, standing on its hind legs only in specific moments, such as when battling or interacting with its trainer, intimidation tactic. Illustrations for the trading card game also show its ability to stick to surfaces with its feet, allowing it to walk on all fours even on vertical and upside down surfaces. Now, it does not state a diet change, but to defend Salazzle, this is not an uncommon practice within nature, so it's nothing to be too surprised about in terms of a harem. Cleaner race fish, even do this with one male and a harem of females, so it goes both ways. Forward march, or rather, I guess, forward dig, as we can go on to discuss Alolan Dugtrio. Alolan Dugtrio is visually very similar to its counterpart, except each head has a mop of golden hair formed from modified whiskers. The left head has a bob cut, the right head curly, shoulder-length hair, and the last one has flowing hair that touches the ground behind it. This hair is made out of thin yet heavy strands of steel, which grows slowly and continuously throughout Alolan Dugtrio's life. The hairs act as a defensive measure, as well as sensors that can detect vibrations from long distances underground. In the Alola region, Alolan Dugtrio is regarded as a feminine deity of the earth, and taking its hairs is thought to bring bad luck. The people of Alola are known to fall to their knees and bow in respect to any Alolan Dugtrio they encounter. And in Alola, there is superstitious belief that several Alolan Dugtrio will emerge out of their holes whenever a volcanic eruption occurs. Older residents of Alola will flee instantly upon witnessing this unusual sight. It's believed that Alolan Dugtrio is capable of detecting movements underground that indicate an impending eruption. Due to this, they tend to come above ground in fright as a warning, which, yeah, I guess there might be some tectonic shifting, which releases pressure, which those rumblings can help cause volcanoes to erupt if they're lying on, I was about to say a fault, but I can't remember the exact word for it. Basically, the dividing line between two plates that exist. I haven't gone through my geology books in a while. But no new diet is stated, yet we still have good info that helped fill it out. Those lovely locks are growing and being tempered due to the pressure and heat that it is exposed to, melting and solidifying as it digs throughout the land, collecting more and more over time itself. So, Lush Jungle and its relation to Wheeler Volcano may be my favorite section in all of Alola ecologically, at least so far, because it is a perfect example of how interconnected everything is and how it could even work in real life. And the only downside is if there is an eruption, but even if that happens, then everything just restarts. All the things that have burned are returned to the soil, revitalizing it through nutrients, enriching the soil, and allowing it all to flourish even better next time. In fact, there are certain trees whose seeds only burst open when exposed to the right amount of heat. So, a natural fire is not a bad thing, and it's meant to help the environment. Again, a natural fire, not anything crazy, not anything uncontrolled. Route 6. A plain and straight route that leads through the middle of Akala Island. It is also known by the name Straight Street. Every Pokemon we find here is a Pokemon we've already talked about, and even their interactions. The only outlier is the Pau-style Oricorio. In its Pau style, residing on Akala Island in Alola and in the terrarium's coastal biome in Unova, Oricorio has pink feathers. Its main body is a dark pink, while most of its feathers are varying shades of pink. Pau-style Oricorio can be difficult to deal with due to its laid-back nature. It uses its dance to focus its mind and increase its psychic power. The dance is also said to be an offering of thanks to its guardian deity, which in this case would be Tapu Lele. It gets caught up in dancing that it sometimes ignores its trainer's orders. In Paldea, Pau-style Oricorio is popular due to being used to maintain health. However, it is hard to find in said region. All of our Oricorios are gonna serve a similar purpose as nectarivores that are influenced by the energy of the island, so I'll keep talking about them, but there won't be much to say outside of their basic information. Route 7, a route that takes you to Wheeler Volcano Park. I can't wait for somebody to tell me it's called Wela, and it's fine, I'll try to fix it, but it makes anyone sweat from the heat of the volcano. Alolan Diglett in Dirt Clouds, Tentacool, Wingull, Finian's Staryu, who is either eating plankton, which bane of my existence, we don't have a plankton Pokemon, or just vibing as Finian eats its arms. Magikarp, Wishy-Washy, and floating on the surface of the water is Pyukumuku. Pyukumuku tends to find a spot it likes and stays there, even returning to the same spot if moved. Once all the food in its favorite spot has been consumed, it will continue to stay there to the point of starvation. Ah, I've eaten all the food here. I should really move to a new place, but I'm just so cozy. This is the equivalent of not wanting to get out of bed for food because you're too cozy. Now, Pyukumuku's body is coated in a viscous liquid that allows it to stay on land for a week without drying out. This fluid is also beneficial to people as a moisturizer. It will expel its fist-like organs if stepped on and smack the perpetrator. It particularly hates having its mouth or spikes touched. Tourists dislike Pyukumuku due to its appearance and lifestyle and often accidentally step on them. Death to them. What do you want from me? You may think that's extreme, and you're right. Pyukumuku is a perfect specimen and deserves respect. It does not deserve to be hated on because of its appearance. It's adorable and you cannot tell me otherwise. I mean, if we're looking at real-life sea cucumbers, then we have a different story. This creates a need for part-time jobs on beaches, chucking this Pokemon back into the sea. However, people in Alola have already taken to throwing the Pokemon back to the sea where it can find food when thin. Pyukumuku is shown to have a friendly relationship with Pelipper, which carries it after scooping it from the water. I only assume that we know this because the Pyukumuku is found once again and does not die. So what exactly does this Pokemon eat though? Considering it is based on the sea cucumber, as I mentioned, even having the purify ability, this would, as you would assume, mean that it is a filter feeder, but that doesn't exactly explain how it runs out of food unless it's living in safe environments in which there's less activity, meaning less food to filter from the water. Well, I learned there's actually more to sea cucumbers than that, and that this bad boy is based on the sea bunny as well, which is incredibly cute and had become very popular for some time, thanks to NOAA, National Ocean Service. Most sea cucumbers are scavengers, moving along the seafloor and feeding on tiny particles of algae or microscopic marine animals collected with tube feet that surround their mouths. The particles they grind down to smaller pieces are further broken down by bacteria and become part of the ocean's nutrient cycle. These creatures, by the way, might also expel their internal organs that would make would-be perpetrators, or predators, run away, similar to how Pyukumuku does. Meanwhile, with the sea bunny, let's learn about a little bit more about him actually, because I know very little personally. Thank you, National Geographic, for the following. The sea bunny, like most sea slugs or nudibranches, is a hermaphrodite. They have both male and female reproduction organs, and when they mate, both partners exchange sperm. The cuddly-looking creatures come armed with incredibly long copulary spines, says Valdez. It's basically like a dart that the animal jabs into its partner during the mating process. This ensures that they stay attached to each other until the exchange is done, he explains. They probably live just a few months to a year, Valdez says, so every chance they get to mate is important. That actually lines up pretty well with Pyukumuku here, who really only lasts until the food runs out. Luckily, J. Parva doesn't have to worry much about predators during its brief life because they're very, very toxic, the sea slug expert says. Anyone who tries to eat them is going to have a very hard time afterwards. Like all the sea slugs in the group containing J. Parva, its scientific name, called the Dorid nudibranches, the sea bunnies steal its toxic defenses from its food. Dorids eat sponges, and some of their toxins are also used in cancer treatments for people. Sea slugs and other groups can steal the stingers right out of jellyfish and use them in their own defense. For instance, slugs in the genus Glaucus will attack and eat one of the most venomous jelly-like animals out there, the Portuguese man of war. Admire and coo over the fuzzy little creature now known as the sea bunny. Just resist the urge to touch those rabbit ears. In other words, Pyukumuku doesn't hunt. It just gets to be the cleaner of the area and feed on moss. Though, I would not be surprised to find out that it eats Marini's toxic spines on occasion or Corsola branches that have broken off, even though it's not a poison-type Pokemon. Wheeler Volcano Park, a mountain with steep paths and wastelands. There is a trial site on top. We'll work our way up the volcano this time to the trial site instead of starting there, as here we have some very interesting Pokemon. Salandit, Fletchling, who is eating berries strictly, Kangaskhan eating some good flora, Cubone eating anything except other Pokemon, and Magby, who I haven't been able to discuss before now. Magby can breathe a 1100 degree Fahrenheit or 600 degrees Celsius flames, and hot embers drip from its mouth. Its health can be determined by these flames. Yellow flames show that a Magby is in good health, while flames mixed with a lot of smoke is symptomatic of fatigue, and flames dripping from its nose is a sign of a cold. Magby's volcanic habitat ensures its health. However, it can be seen living in towns. It is known to be rather small and timid, it leaks out flames when excited or surprised, and it prefers to soak in the magma of volcanoes in order to recover from the day's fatigue. While this doesn't state a diet, it has been confirmed that Magmar does hunt other Pokemon for food. Whether they're plants or meat does not matter, but Mag B actually has the lowest encounter rate here outside of Kangaskhan, likely meaning that even though in real life prey would have a higher population, here on routes our prey typically have a lower population, likely due to hiding. They are surrounded by other fire types, and while Fletchling isn't all that strong, it may still have trouble fighting it or any of our other fiery friends as a form of sustenance. So, for Magby, it likely sticks to fatty berries in order to live long enough and achieve its evolution. Now, of course, I can't ignore the fact that Cubone will call out and Kangaskhan appears, and there is one simple explanation for this. It's baby. I'm not even remotely kidding. Kangaskhan is known to have very strong motherly instincts, even being shown in the anime to have taken in Ash's Pikachu alongside its own child when Pikachu was just a little Pichu. Because of this, it is safe to assume that if there are any baby Pokemon that do not have a parent assisting them, then Kangaskhan will appear for their call of help. And to be fair, Cubone does kind of look similar enough to it and its baby, meaning that this similarity may actually drive Kangaskhan to assist it more. But that's all you get until you reach the top and have the honor of battling the Totem Pokemon. In this case, you witness the spiritual flames belonging to Alolan Marowak. In the Alola region, Marowak was faced with an abundance of its natural enemies, grass-type Pokemon. This harsh environment led it to bond closely with its friends, which is said to have created a sort of sixth sense, and caused it to take a new form. Alola Marowak's body is black, and it has pale gray eyes. There are dark, flame-like marks on its skull between the eyes, and compared to regular Marowak's squatter, thicker body, Alola Marowak is actually relatively thin. White markings resemble shoulder blades, vertebra, and hip bones, which are visible on its back. The bone Alola Marowak uses is longer than the one regular Marowak uses, and it customarily mourns its companions by burying them and dancing in mourning. Alola Marowak rubs the bone it wields against his forehead to light the ends in a green flame, and then twirls the flaming bone. The flame is made from the spirit of its deceased mother. The deceased mother has transformed into a vengeful spirit that will protect Alolan Marowak. It specializes in an attack where it releases a weak ball of flame from its bone that will relentlessly pursue its foes. Alolans would fear it for a conjurer due to its rarity and the fearful sight of it dancing with said bone. The dance is also used as a way of mourning for its lost allies. Once its flames have spread onto an opponent though, they are impossible to put out with water. The cursed flames are known to cause both mental and physical pain. And I will say Alolan Marowak is arguably one of the most perfect examples of extreme adaptation through external pressures. This is what drives our evolutions, and it has given, or rather driven, Marowak to have this new form through these extremes. It's what drives all of our regional variants, and I genuinely love it. They're one of my favorite things in all of Pokemon. And Alolan Marowak is social, an individual that protects others, and is likely a Pokemon that has not changed its diet, but with burning up its foes, it simply assists other Pokemon and the environment itself for anything that feeds on the soil. I mean, just imagine being absolutely harried by foes that are stronger than you, only for you to evolve in a way that allows you to use a flame against them, and despite being surrounded by water on an island, you cannot put out that flame anymore. That is insane to me. But we move on. Route 8. An oceanside route with great views. It is a popular date spot enjoyed by many couples and Pokemon. Once again, many Pokemon we have seen and discussed already, though Chinchou is also here being a creature flashbanging other Pokemon and eating them, but then we do add in Stuffle and an ambush encounter of Wimpod, though that is all the way at the end of the route by the water as it hides in the caves. I'm amazed that it's even technically a part of this route. Though, for Stuffle, around the center of its short, puffy tail is a dark pink ring marking. Under the tail is a small white flap resembling the tag on a stuffed toy, though that is actually an organ that releases an odor used to communicate with others of its kind. That could be like scenting, that could be territory marking, that could be, it'd be like, hey, I went this way, and then when it calls out for help, the mama appears. Despite its small size, Stuffle has extraordinary strength and can knock out even well-trained Pokemon if they are unprepared. The combination of its cute appearance, mannerisms, and fluffy fur make it very popular. However, Stuffle actually dislikes being touched and will flail its powerful arms if it is embraced. Stuffle's flailing is powerful enough to break thick tree trunks. As mentioned in the Sleep Style decks, Stuffle is filled with power despite sleeping. It is often seen flailing about and moving constantly while sleeping, and as seen in the Pokemon problem segment of Living on the Cutting Edge, it is powerful enough to break through walls of steel. If you thought you had a problem flailing in your sleep, imagine being able to break walls, steel, trees, bones, you name it, just by flailing in your sleep like this Pokemon does. Very cute, but very, very dangerous. What a great combination for any creature, honestly. And while there is no diet here, when we look at Bewear's info, in Lentil, Bewear are known to hibernate during seasons when food is scarce. It is also said to eat honey and berries. So this means that we can assume that it and Stuffle's diets are that of a regular bear, but let's also look at its inspirations a little bit to fill things out, because its actual inspiration is through the red panda, which are not actually related to bears, but rather raccoons, weasels, and skunks. This does make things a little bit difficult, because red pandas don't exactly hibernate. They enter a state called torpor, a state of being where they go into a deeper sleep to reduce their metabolism and breathing to reduce exertion of energy. If you want an oversimplified version of it, it's like a step before hibernation, I guess. And you don't just absolutely go for a very, very long time. You just go into deeper sleeps every night. Now, thank you to Hertfordshire Zoo. Thank you, Hertfordshire Zoo, for that information. And according to the World Wildlife Fund, red pandas feed mainly on leaves and bamboo, but occasionally snack on fruit, insects, bird eggs, and small lizards too. Which, what do we find here? Fletchinder, Trumbeak, and Salandit. And remember what I said about Pokemon evolving due to pressure? Well, knowing Stuffle's strength and how as a Bewear it can break trees with ease, it can be surmised that the reason we don't see Fletchling and Pick-a-Peck is because Stuffle is eating eggs and even fighting the birds, forcing them to need to be stronger in order to protect their nests, which Salandit might be doing that exact sort of thing as well. Meanwhile, otherwise, it is just smashing Salandit for meals, assuming Salandit doesn't burn it up first, because a Stuffle might have the fluffy ability, which makes it a little bit more physically capable of taking damage, but is weaker to fire type moves. So it's kind of a give and take, back and forth within this area. Though, let's move on to our wimpy little friend hiding away in small caves, Wimpod. This Pokemon is cowardly by nature and weary of both noise and sudden movements. However, its curiosity will cause it to approach people or Pokemon that are standing still. It will spit a poisonous liquid when threatened, and sometimes accompanies its evolved form, Golisopod. The stench of this fluid warns others that danger is nearby. Wimpod will eat and store anything, including garbage from the sea. This habit makes them highly valued as cleaners. When it finds coins, Murkrow and Meowth go after it. Thank you, Pokemon, for making my job nice and easy. Nature's cleaners in easy-to-read letters. Luckily, Wimpod is able to stay out of trouble, otherwise any creature that eats bugs might be going after it, such as Trumbeak. Diglett's Tunnel. Can you guess what's here? Zubat, Diglett, and Larvitar, oddly enough. Not much to say here. Zubat feeds on Diglett, Larvitar feeds on all the soil that Diglett has dug up, and Diglett has already done a lot of the work to help make this tunnel a reality, as humanity also worked alongside them to dig it out a little bit further. So a little bit of mixing between the ecology and how people have influenced Pokemon and the environment itself. Route 9 just has water encounters that we've discussed before as a whole, and because I didn't mention it before, I should now. I am skipping Memorial Hill from Melemele and Hau'oli Cemetery. Reason is that while they have wild encounters that are attracted to the graves, the Pokemon don't really have much of an ecosystem to mention. Zubat attacks people. Ghastly is born from the decaying gases and might attack people or Pokemon. Murkrow has no prey here. Drifloon is representative of spirits going to heaven and might drag a child with them. Oops. Mischievous might scare someone so it gets energy that way. And Phantup just doesn't eat. Not much to say. So we move on to briefly speak on Hano Beach. Here we see Staryu, Tentacool, Wingull, Finian, Pikumuku, and Sandygast, which, to be fair, kinda appears whenever you're on any beach. Which, Sandygast is known to inhabit beaches and is born from grudges that seep into the sand, such as from Pokemon that suffer defeat in battle or the deceased. It can suck the life force of people or Pokemon through its mouth. Apparently, in the Alola region, sticking a hand into its mouth is a way of proving one's courage. A person who grabs Sandygast's shovel or puts a hand in its mouth falls under its control. It then uses its power to make children add sand to its body so it can become bigger, which would eventually lead to its evolution. It cares a lot about the shovel on its head, and
A Sandygast that loses its shovel may replace it with something like a branch or a flag, but it is said to keep searching for said lost shovel. Sandygast attacks prey by flinging sand into their eyes. However, because it is very slow, its prey tend to escape before it can approach them. So it has no choice but to be an ambush predator or luck out with someone or something stupid enough to fall under its control. Understood. Though I will note that Sandygast and even its evolution are perfect examples of Pokemon that are our reset button. They serve as population control. When the population gets too high, something comes in and blasts it back down, or at least prevents it from exceeding the maximum threshold. Because if you break that threshold, disease runs rampant, food sources dwindle, and a lot of creatures just begin dying. Other Pokemon that have served this purpose are in fact Gyarados and Sharpedo, who are voracious and vicious monsters. Our final location in Akala is in fact Akala Outskirts, and while every Pokemon here is one we have talked about, in this edition, or in past editions of Ecology, we do finally get to see Raticate and Gumshoos here, of course appearing in opposite times of the day, as per their nature. We also find Natu, who eats fruits and tree shoots, Wingull, Nosepass, digging for nutritious minerals that are hopefully a little magnetic, Stuffle, Magikarp, Chinchou, and Wishiwashi. I think the funniest thing to consider though is the possibility that nobody messes with Stuffle because it will break them if they draw near. We already know that Raticate and Gumshoos are here because of their relationship forcing them both to evolve, but I'd like to think Stuffle acts as a dopey little roadblock on occasion whenever either of them gets a little too aggressive and ambitious. Now technically that was the last route, but to actually close out Akala, we get to talk about Tapu Lele, who resides within the Ruins of Life. The people of Akala Island worship Tapu Lele. This guardian of Akala Island is known to scatter glowing scales, which affect others by stimulating and healing their bodies. However, these scales are also dangerous if too many are touched at once. Some consider it to be guilelessly cruel for the way it destroys others, as it scatters its scales for its own amusement. This has resulted in Tapu Lele being described as an incarnation of nature. The reason being it does not feel remorse for its cruel actions. An old legend says that Tapu Lele ended a war between Alola's islands by healing the tired warriors with its scales, but rumors point to a more disturbing truth behind the story. I have never found out what those rumors are, by the way, but I believe they have to do with nearly killing someone in war and forcing them to join your side through these abilities that it has. I've talked a ton about the Tapus and how they relate to Polynesian gods, but I think I need to revisit it, add some more detail to it, and talk about the old kingdom of Alola before it fell. Now, Tapu Lele's strength does come from the energy stored within its shell, which it will close and make itself look like a butterfly, proboscis and all. If it finds itself at a disadvantage in battle, it will prioritize not outright losing as opposed to trying for a decisive victory. It is said to gain energy from the scent of flowers, and is responsible for the pink psychic seeds which, similar to Tapu Koko, have affected the flowers, environment, and Oricorio that we find here. But with Akala complete, we can sail on over to Ula'Ula Island. Ula'Ula Island in the southeast of the archipelago is the largest of Alola's islands. It is also the most varied in terms of weather and terrain, with significantly rougher terrain areas than other islands. For such a large island, it has very few settlements, mainly City, the largest city in Ula'Ula. Tapu Village, destroyed by a Tapu a long time ago, contains just a Pokemon Center, and Po Town, occupied by Team Skull. These settlements all sit in the shadow of a contiguous mountain range in the heart of the island, which includes 3 mountain peaks and a harsh desert. On the southwest coast of the island is a large lagoon with breakable rocks that the Poke-Ride's Sharpedo Jet can just break on through. Notable Ula'Ula Island landmarks are the Lake of the Moon, Lake of the Sun, both being perfectly circular lakes that have special connections to the legendary Pokemon of Alola, Solgaleo, and Lunala. Now, we have Mount Hokulani. We find carrion bird and predator Fearow, the ecological outlier that is Ditto. Cleffa is here as this is the best place to see the stars, but it just eats vegetation, assuming it eats anything at all. Skarmory is just like Fearow. Elekid is eating berries and generating electricity. LGM doesn't eat, but is here for the stars and space like Cleffa. And then Beldum is actually here because of the only truly new Pokemon that we find, Meteor. When its core is exposed, Meteor loses its rocky shell, revealing a bright pastel color for its true form. Depending on the color of debris and food it absorbed and ate while in the stratosphere, its core can be red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, or violet. I believe those are aren't those all just supposed to be the rainbow? Meteor forms in the stratosphere from an aggregation of mutated nanoparticles, where it absorbs particulate matter from which it builds its core and shell. When touched in meteor form, meteor will react when touched or called to. It is unknown if these responses indicate its actual consciousness. Eventually, this process makes it too heavy, and it falls towards the surface of the planet. When its shell breaks from landing, meteor becomes lighter and capable of attacking quickly. However, it cannot survive for long with its core exposed and will eventually die if not placed inside a Pokeball quickly enough. Despite this, many fallen meteor will attempt to return to space, sadly being unable to actually make the trek. Despite their wish to return home, all they can do is fade away without their shells. The huge pastel coloring of Meteor's core often inspires designers to use it as a motif for clothing and accessories, while in the ozone layer, it serves as food to stronger Pokemon such as Rayquaza. Its diet consists of eating dust, and places where Meteor falls are few, Alola being one of them. A transient Pokemon, one that, when it does fall down, it is guaranteed to disappear. It's kind of beautiful in a very sad way to know that they will pass away so quickly and so easily. But I have a feeling that their energy or non-physical essence recollects in the atmosphere and reforms them. Meanwhile, their shell is likely similar to any other meteor and may contain a multitude of elements, including metals that may have some magnetic properties, which is perfect for a Beldum to feast on. This mountain, though, is not excessively magnetic, so it has to be attracted to the area specifically for the meteor that do fall here. Any meteor shell that isn't used by Beldum could simply be collected and used just as any other meteorite piece would be. Moving on to Route 11, one of the routes that connects Melee City with the nature surrounding it. This one leads to a rough mountain trail. Parasect still doing what Paris be doing. Lydia now absorbing specifically starlight for energy, even though, again, that goes against normal science, but oh well. Though it also eats berries. Ariados eating everyone. Trumbeak is here, which it might not eat Trumbeak unless it catches it by surprise. Pancham eating small mammals, but primarily plenty of bamboo, which we do find on this island, and then 3 new Pokemon, starting with Shiinotic. This Pokemon lives in dark forests and competes with Parasect over territory. Their fights often leave the area coated in spores, which those spores may not only spread the general growth of mushrooms, but might also actually assist their own species in the long run. In at least the case of Morlo, they probably are born from those spores. Meanwhile, with Paris, they lay their eggs in the mushrooms, to my understanding, but we don't really know for sure. We just know that they're born without those mushrooms. In the Pokemon Series episode Ula'Ula Island, Shiinotic has been shown illuminating the spots and gills on its mushroom. This strange light can confuse people who enter its habitat, causing them to lose their way. Additionally, the flickering spore it releases can cause drowsiness. It takes advantage of sleeping prey by sucking their energy through the tips of its arms. It can also transmit energy to whomever it likes, be it human, Pokemon, or vegetation, through the same method. That is essentially what we talked about when we spoke of Morlo, so no new info other than its aggressive competition being confirmed, which I think is pretty cool, especially as Parasect is a bit of a more invasive and destructive species in nature, while Shiinotic is keeping nature alive. There's another bear in these woods as we find the ever-sleeping Komala. This Pokemon stays asleep from birth to death, staying this way because of its diet of certain leaves containing poison only Komala can break down, which induces sedative properties. While its expression sometimes changes as if it's aware of its surroundings, this appears to be a result of its dreams instead. It is able to eat, travel, and even battle without waking. If the log pillow it clings to is removed, it will be unable to sleep well and thrash wildly, yet it stays asleep. However, it will sometimes cling to the arm of a trainer it does trust. During a deep sleep, it stops moving altogether, and according to ancient people, if a small amount of the saliva created when it eats leaves is watered down and ingested, one will be able to sleep well. Ah yes, melatonin the drink, NyQuil chicken. Don't do that, do not do that, it's a terrible thing and it's disgusting. I've not tried it, nor will I ever. Now, this diluted saliva was also historically used as an anesthetic for surgeries. Hypno have been known to hunt this Pokemon in Alola, appearing to prefer them over humans. Now, while it says Hypno hunts Komala, it seeks them out mainly because they are an infinite source of dream mist to consume. They might kidnap a Komala, but that's about as far as that goes. The downside would be if they don't give Komala the food they need, though they're at least semi-intelligent as a species, so I'm sure they'll figure it out most of the time. What this means for Route 11 is that Ariados threatens most of the lives we find here, with exception to Shiinotic, as it may not eat the fairy mushroom. Meanwhile, Trumpbeak serves to keep Ariados semi-in check. The competition in this area really drove a number of evolutions. Parasect and Shiinotic. Spinarak isn't here because maybe it was getting attacked by Pikapek, only to evolve and give Pikapek trouble, forcing it to evolve into Trumpbeak. And then poor Ledian never really stood a chance as a Ladybug due to its weaker nature overall. Komala is the only one that's a little strange. It has the highest population here, and while I'm sure an Ariados may get the jump on it, Komala is otherwise unbothered for the most part in this area, allowing it and Pancham to persist easily as long as they avoid that giant spider. Route 12, a route full of rugged boulders that present a difficult challenge to anyone who hopes to pass through it. Mudbray is back, Torkoal is eating nothing but coal, Manectric is a wolf hunting down... Actually, I have no clue. I mean, we do find Houndoom here, so there is the chance that Houndour and Electrike were engaging in territorial disputes here, which drove up their evolution to occur. Because otherwise, I doubt they're hunting any other Pokemon in this area, especially as we still don't see Mudbray evolve, and Torkoal is a pretty sturdy Pokemon. The only real new Pokemon that is here is Alolan Graveler, and we have to talk about Alolan Geodude because even though it's not here, I want to get a good basis. In the Alola region, Geodude is made from a magnetic rock with a more silvery appearance. There are areas on Alolan Geodude's body that are especially magnetic and attract iron sand, creating the appearance of black eyebrows and strands of short black hair. Its fingers are fused together, leaving only the thumb and index finger free. Stepping on Alolan Geodude results in an electrical shock and sometimes an angry headbutt. Like regular Geodude, it competes with others by bashing their bodies together. The iron sand sticks to the one with the stronger magnetism. The Alolan Golem will fire these Geodude from its back if real rocks are absent. Now, Geodude is known to eat rocks, and these Alolan variants have the galvanize ability, and in this context, this actually refers to galvanism, which is the production of electricity through chemical reactions, which is what allowed the Geodude here to have the electrical typing. They're eating rocks that have minerals within them that allow them to hold electricity and eventually stronger magnetism through the iron and black sand, which is magnetic itself. Alolan Graveler has a very quick-tempered personality and feeds on Dravite, which creates the yellow crystals on its body and grants it its electrical abilities. It often fights with others over food, and when two smash together, it creates a flash of light and a booming sound. For this reason, people refer to it as the fireworks of the earth. Similar to its Cantonian counterpart, Alolan Graveler rolls down mountain paths. However, instead of flattening obstacles as it rolls, it sends them flying by zapping them with electricity. Dravite specifically is a diamagnetic substance, typically being very weak in terms of magnetism. But I suppose through enough, black sand and Dravite, a reaction occurs with our Pokemon here and allows them to use electricity to better degrees in this current form, especially as it is a tourmaline, which is, or rather can, generate and hold electric charges when subjected to heat or strong physical pressure, which is why they create that flash of light and the big booming sound when they collide, which is pretty freaking cool. Otherwise, this route is a little bit of an outlier and seems to be more of a route that Pokemon might just find themselves on more than inhabiting it properly. Territorial disputes, lots of conflict, but otherwise, no real hunting going on here. Blush Mountain, the mountain where the geothermal power plant is situated. Its output covers almost all of Ula'Ula Island's electric needs. Graveler, Elekid, Torkoal, Mudbray, and 4 whole new Pokemon, starting with Charjabug. And while we know its diet, let's just read up on it to fill up our info. It is often found half buried in earth or leaves, munching on large quantities of hummus. The sturdy shell covering Charjabug's body protects it from attacks, allowing it to eat peacefully. This diet helps Charjabug evolve into Vikavolt. In its body is an electric sac, which it uses to store electricity generated by digesting food. The electricity it stores could run a household for a whole day and can be shared with other Pokemon. People on camping trips are grateful to have a Charjabug around. It can discharge electricity from the tips of its jaws to attack especially persistent opponents, and will zap anyone who accidentally steps on. What's with people in Alola or people visiting Alola constantly accidentally stepping on things. Do you guys just not pay attention to where you're walking at all? Just nobody do that? Like, I know you can't really watch your feet, but still. As shown in the Pokemon the Series Sun and Moon episode Rise and Shine Starship, it can send sound waves to communicate with nearby Grubbin. Vikavolt is no- wait, hold on, that it can send sound waves? I can do the same thing just by screaming. Anywho, Vikavolt is known to clasp Charjabug in between its legs and use it as a battery to enhance its electric-type moves, unless it is in an aerial battle. As mentioned in Pokemon Sleep, it releases electricity while it sleeps. The reason is due to it still digesting the meal that it consumes. Now, the reason we find it here is because the geothermal plant does release a lot of electricity, which attracts them and is what is a small part of what they need to evolve. More specifically, it is said that it needs a strong magnetic field to evolve, which Blush Mountain does have. Now, speaking of, this power plant runs on one of the coolest of all power sources, geothermal power, which is basically the heat and energy released from the planet itself being harnessed into energy that we can use. Literally think Origin power that Kyogre and Groudon use, except we actually use it for our energy sources. It's so strong, it's naturally created constantly. The only way it would stop is basically if the planet's core cools completely, and well, I mean, we won't have to worry about living without it for very long after that would happen. Back to Pokemon that we do find here though, because the rest of our newbies are all attracted to the heat and electricity that we do find here, such as Dedenne, who eats berries, nectar, and pollen, while just absorbing electricity for future use, and Togedemaru. It uses the needle on top of its head to attract and gather electricity. Groups can be seen gathered with their needles standing upright, waiting to be struck by lightning on stormy nights, or rather days, to make up for its somewhat limited electric capacity. Why would you do that? If you have a low electric capacity, wouldn't you overload your body by getting struck by lightning? Would these things just pop like balloons at that point? Either way, I guess that's why they're kind of a mouse Pokemon. There must be a ton of them from poor decisions. Either way, some trainers use its ability to absorb electricity as a strategy in battle. The opponent is coaxed into unleashing an electric type attack and then has that power turned against it. When it is pleased, this Pokemon will curl into a ball and roll around uncontrollably. It clashes with Elekid whenever it tries to steal the latter's electricity, usually ending with even matches. The conflict between them is clearly not enough to risk their lives, and since it isn't a source of actual food for them, electricity that is, then it makes sense that we don't actually see Elekid evolve. But what about Togedemaru's actual diet? Because if these Pokemon are just absorbing electricity for whatever self-defense use, what are they actually eating? Well, Togedemaru has got a mixture of porcupine and mouse going on, which more specifically, there is the Ryukyu spiny rat, which is a rodent and may be the inspiration for it. From what I could find, they eat fruits, nuts, and insects, and though we don't see any insects around here and they don't really exist on any other route, we can safely assume that it only eats fruits and nuts. The last entry for Blush Mountain is the explosive diarrhea dragon itself, Turtonator. This Pokemon resides on volcanoes where it camouflages itself among the rocks and waits for prey. In addition to hunting, Turtonator also feeds on sulfur and other volcanic materials. This diet rich in explosive material has contributed to a layer of explosive material in its shell. Really cool and really gross. Why do people forget this Pokemon exists every single time they want to say that Pokemon don't poop? Either way, this diet also makes Turtonator's feces dangerously explosive. The feces can be put to many different uses. In Pokemon Adventures, they use it to make makeshift landmines, exploding from a mere touch. The explosion is ignited by sparks from the spikes on its shell and released through the hole on its chest. The orifice also acts as Turtonator's weak point. Its explosive capabilities are dampened by the rain, however, so it takes refuge in caves on rainy days, and it is also capable of spewing poisonous gas and flames from its nostrils. So it hunts prey, but doesn't detail what kind. It is a turtle, and while dragon turtles aren't real, we can at least look at snapping turtles for information, more specifically, the alligator snapping turtle, as to me that feels like the most apt comparison, and I feel like it. According to Smithsonian's National Zoo and Conservation Biology Institute, mouthful, alligator snapping turtles are primarily carnivorous. They eat fish and other aquatic animals, but have also been known to eat small mammals and some vegetation. These turtles are most active at night and will scavenge or hunt for food. When hunting, these ambush predators stay motionless in the water and reveal the worm-like appendage on their tongues to lure in unsuspecting prey. Pretty similar to how Turtonator works, except instead of using its tongue, it just kind of waits and then fart blasts them, I suppose. This means anything smaller than Turtonator is on the menu. There are a lot of Pokemon here who simply don't eat other Pokemon. Chargebug likely evolved because Mudbray is here to make it easier to get hummus, in addition to all the electricity found here, and the electricity and magnetism also attracts Graveler, meaning that Turtonator isn't that much of a threat and likely just takes what it can get, rather than specifically putting a ton of pressure on one specific species, which helps avoid that evolution. Okay, I also realized I lied, that was not the last one, because this is the only chance we actually have to talk about Vikavolt, who gets called in as an SOS for Charjabug. Vikavolt produces electricity with an organ in its abdomen and controls it with its huge jaws to fire powerful electromagnetic beams. And by the way, it's super fast in the anime, but we'll get there. Vikavolt shoots these to strike down bird Pokemon. When it clasps the Charjabug in its legs, it is able to utilize it as an extra battery. This allows it to rapidly fire its powerful beam attacks. However, during fierce aerial fights, it will release Charjabug to make itself lighter and more mobile. It is an adept flyer, capable of acrobatic maneuvers such as tailspins and sharp turns. Even as it weaves through complicated tangles of branches in the forest, it is able to maintain high-speed flight. Yet in the games, it is a very slow Pokemon, which is a shame. It is known to have a rivalry with Pinsir and Heracross. As shown in the episode A High-Speed Awakening, it likes to drink tree sap, which is probably why, considering those two also really enjoy tree sap. In that same episode, it is shown that, in Alola, there is a competition known as the Vikavolt Race, where trainers can have their Vikavolt race for the chance to win a Beginnium Z, and as mentioned in Pokemon Sleep, Vikavolt's mobility is exceptional, to the point it can remain flying while it sleeps. This usually happens after intense battles, where it used up too much electricity. In preparation for its next battle, it will sleep upside down in order to generate electricity in its abdomen. Vikavolt is my second favorite bug-type Pokemon, just under Volcarona. It has companionship with its previous form, it takes revenge on bird Pokemon that hunted it in its past evolutions, and honestly, considering those massive mandibles that it does have, I would not be surprised if it is not just getting revenge, but also eating bird Pokemon. This isn't out of the realm of possibility, as even praying manti will kill small birds like hummingbirds for food. Freaky little things. They're cool, but freaky. Let's move on. Ula'Ula Beach, a beach that spreads on the southern coast of Ula'Ula Island, a very popular and busy place for mantine surf. We're really only taking a stop here to mention that while yes, Pelipper is found here, this is where we find Bruxish. I just say normal, Bruxish. On top of its head is a protuberance with a dark purple bulb at the tip. The bulb is able to open like a flower, which reveals a light blue orb in its center. This Pokemon buries itself on the seafloor, leaving only the growth on its head exposed. By emitting a low level of psychic power, it serves as a radar to detect prey. Additionally, the protuberance can emit a strong psychic power. Opponents bathed in this power are stricken with terrible headaches and fall unconscious. Prey, which includes Shelter and Marini, are ground into mush and then eaten. Toxapex, though, is a rival of Bruxish in warm ocean currents. When emitting psychic power, Bruxish grinds its teeth, which is a reference to Bruxism, which is exactly that, which stimulates its brain and creates said psychic energy. This sound is enough to send nearby Pokemon fleeing immediately. So in Alola, the lifeguards here allow this Pokemon to remain in their area to prevent other dangerous water Pokemon from gathering. Any sunlight reflecting on Bruxish's ripples will cause the water to shine brightly. So based on this, humans don't need to fear it, but it will absolutely destroy any other sea life that it decides to eat or would be in the shallow waters. We find on this beach Tentacle, Finian, Wishy-Washy, Magikarp, and then Crab Brawler in the berry pile. So Bruxish is either paying a visit or it is enjoying a few fishier meals, at least until Pelipper swoops in and picks up any fish that it can in its massive schmouth. Nothing new on Route 13, so we're going to move right on to Haina Desert, a scorching hot desert beyond Route 13. Trainers often get lost here in this broiling labyrinth. Dugtrio Krokorok eating everything that comes its way that has meat in its body, and Trapinch eating anything that falls into its trap. Seems strange, doesn't it? Why would Krokorok be evolved? There's not that much food here. Nothing here is a threat to it, so why? Well, that is until you look at what can happen when any Pokemon calls for help in this desert. Because either you get Golett rolling in, who doesn't eat anything but will deck another Pokemon that threatens it, Baltoy, who also doesn't eat anything but will Psychic Blast anything that threatens it, both being signs of ancient civilization while not being a prey species. You have a Castform who could appear, or finally, the threat to all the species in this area that, again, have meat or enter its territory, Gabite. Gabite is a fierce and predatory Pokemon known for its scales, which are believed to have medicinal properties and the ability to heal most illnesses, even those thought to be incurable. Gabite has short, extremely sharp teeth, like its pre-evolved form Gibble. It has been known to move at extreme speeds. The protrusions on Gabite's head allow it to emit ultrasound waves, which can be used for navigating through pitch-dark caves. It is also a very territorial creature and will fight back against enemies to protect its home. It is passionate about shiny objects such as gems, treasures, and even carping for that matter, as it hoards a collection of them in its nest. When it sees Sableye trying to take Carpink as food, Gabite jealously attacks the Sableye. Despite its aggressive demeanor, giving Gabite a sparkly item such as a glass bead can actually turn it docile. It predominantly lives in mountain regions and can survive in both snowy and arid temperatures. Imagine needing to walk through the desert and you're just carrying like a handful or a bag of glass beads just so that way you can pass through and pay the toll so that way you may live. Though in other words, it does not matter if you are made of meat, metal, or mud. If you step into its territory, if it hears you, it will attempt to murder you. And this is why we see all of these evolved Pokemon, or Pokemon that are not actually actively hunted down. But you might be asking, why is Trapinch not evolved? My assumption is that Trapinch, being a Pokemon that is an ambush predator, waiting at the bottom of a pit trap, it runs into the least amount of conflict with other Pokemon. It isn't wandering into Gabite territory, and as such, it is keeping itself safe for the most part. And no, it does not call in its evolutions, they're just not here. Route 14 has nothing special other than the special encounter of Frillish attacking a human, and then we save them. So we will actually discuss the Thrifty Mega Mart, which is an abandoned place where ghost Pokemon take refuge. The original site of the first Thrifty Mega Mart store, it is said to have been destroyed by the island's Tapu, and that was because it was built on a sacred ground. Good job! Here you find Golbat, Shuppet eating up bad emotions, but not just existing and having fun since it doesn't eat anything, Jellicent taking the souls of anyone who wanders in, though luckily it is only part of the trial, so it should be friendly, assumedly. Klefki absorbing metallic ions from any metal left behind, Ghastly and Haunter just existing and occasionally killing a Golbat for extra sustenance, and I think this is the one and only time I could talk about my best boy, Gengar, as we encounter him as part of the trial. Gengar has the ability to hide perfectly in the shadow of any object, granting it exceptional stealth. However, Gengar's body acts as a heat sink. Its presence cools the temperature of the surrounding area by nearly 10 degrees Fahrenheit or 5 degrees Celsius roughly, because it absorbs the warmth. It is shown in Pokemon in the series that Gengar can fly, turn intangible, possess people and other Pokemon, create illusions, and extend its tongue by several meters. Gengar is very mischievous and at times malicious. It enjoys playing practical jokes and casting curses, such as pretending to be one's shadow, then behaving erratically. When the quarry notices, or its target for that matter is what that is, the Gengar takes delight in its victim's terror. However, it has been known to be loyal to a trainer who treats it well. Being the result of an evolution via trading, it is rarely found in the wild, though they can be found in caves and dark places where shadows form. It is especially fond of urban areas such as cities and back alleys, but only during the night. As mentioned in Pokemon Sleep, it is known to sleep deeply while hiding in the shadow of a target it plans to curse. Now, it is a little bit odd as a Pokemon. It does hunt others thanks to info we know, as we just stated, in addition to its Mega and Gigantamax form, though it may not need to. It just curses others for the funsies, you know, just girl things. Meanwhile, we also have one of the best Pokemon of all time, or at least another one of them, easily top 10, Mimikyu. And while I know it doesn't eat anything, we can at least cover its information still. It is a lonely Pokemon, always covered by its disguise. It is unknown what its true appearance actually looks like, however glimpses of it are seen, such as its claw, its underside, and its eyes. since this Pokemon is weakened by sunlight, it is rumored that the veil it has is used for protection. It is believed that seeing its true form will cause a mysterious illness or even a painful death. Because of this, it will become agitated and violently stop anyone from attempting to look underneath its rag. So that rag protects us and protects it. Its disguise is modeled after Pikachu because of the popularity of Pikachu-styled merchandise, thinking that its disguise would allow it to make friends with people. It uses the disguise to bond more with humans and other Pokemon, though unfortunately this attempt makes its disguise look more creepy. Until recent times, it was initially thought by humans to be just a ghost wearing a cloth, and as mentioned in Pokemon Sleep, it mimics Pikachu to the point it even sleeps similar to it. Its relationship with Pikachu can vary between individuals and canons, with some being antagonistic, as seen in the Pokemon series, or can be friendly as shown in the short A Mimikyu Bedtime Story. So by this, we can understand why we find all the ghosts here. They're not really hunting down other creatures, at least not here, they're just finding a safe place for them to exist. They feel most comfortable in the dark, and some of them actually can't even exist outside very well, like Ghastly and Haunter, which can be blown away by the wind. So this serves as a perfect place to rest during the day. Route 15 just throws a Slowpoke into our normal coastal environment. Route 16 has nothing new as well, and then we reach Ula'Ula Meadow. Ledian Ariados Cottony Petalil Floette, who has a symbiotic nature with flowers, as we've discussed. Its evolution likely brought on because of Ariados being an aggressive hunter, similar to how we do not find Cutiefly here, but rather its evolution, Ribbonbee. Ribbonbee uses its fluffy hair to hold pollen it collects from flowers. Rain turns its hair dirty and its pollen damp, so it only visits fields if the weather remains clear. When storms are on the horizon, Ribbonbee hides in tree hollows and waits stock still. The pollen and nectar it collects are used to form balls called pollen puffs. These balls can be used as food or relieve tiredness with a soothing effect. The Alolan people sell pollen puffs as valuable, nutritious supplements. When Ribbonbee senses a human or Pokemon feeling sad, it will cheer them up using handmade pollen puffs, which is adorable. It's such a cute little cheerleader, and it's still a great pollinator. The downside is, yes, it is still having to fight and avoid Ariados, since it is a bug and Ariados' poison is gonna hurt it pretty badly. Though, thanks to all the pollination from our insects here and extra help with growing from our plant Pokemon, the red flowers bloom and bring about the presence of Baile-style Oricorio. In its Baile style, which resides on Ula'Ula Island in Alola and in eastern Paldea, Oricorio is covered in red feathers with 2 lines of black feathers across each of its wings and its tail, resembling a flamenco dress. Baile style Oricorio is very passionate and exudes power when it dances and can get fiercely angry if it is given the wrong orders. It throws off downy fluff when it dances that it can ignite to perform a fiery dance attack. Baile-style Oricorio is popular with the people of Paldea due to its dancing style matching their temperament nature. Luckily, through its fire power, it just might be holding off Ariados just fine. I also can say now that the Baile style is my favorite of them all. Who would have guessed? The Spanish guy loves the Spanish bird the most. Big shocker. In all seriousness though, this place is absolutely abundant with these flowers, and it's all thanks to the ecosystem we find here in the Pokemon that support it. Ariados is only here to ensure that the population doesn't grow too much as it gets an easy meal, and then Oricorio is here to sip on and destroy some Ariados if they get a little bit too greedy. Route 17 honestly isn't much to speak about. We do get to add in Scraggy, who is eating bugs, berries, and seeds, and then we get Bisharp, or Bisharp, who is actively attacking anything with a pulse and eating it. Honestly, when we look at this route as a whole, it's a pretty dangerous route. Raticate, Gumshoe, Sphero, Skarmory, Ariados, and then you throw in Ledian as if it stood a chance here. Goomy, Castform, and Crabrawler are also here, but not as random encounters in the grass. They're just less common in general. And honestly, even looking at Scraggy, it's gonna have a pretty hard time evolving here, or surviving rather. But that's how it likes it, I suppose, as it doesn't even call Scrafty for help. The reason Ponyard isn't here is probably because of Scraggy, who doesn't even evolve, because during the day, they make up 40% of the population here. So worst case scenario, if you come after it, it's just gonna beat you down as a group, kind of like those birds from regular show. Absolute smackdown, especially since they love fighting. So they're kind of a menace on this route, I'd say. Mount Lanakila, the roughest and coldest mountain in the Alola region. A large-scale construction project has been taken up here. The encounters here are fairly consistent, so I won't separate all the different cave portions and the trek up. We find Raticate, Absol, who is an omen for something big that we find on our way up, as it has always warned us when there are threats on nearby routes, Snowrunt's eating ice, Gumshoes, Vanilla's entire line is here enjoying water and slowly growing thanks to the sun's warmth in a cold environment, Castform, Sneasel being an avid hunter of anything that lays an egg, and for the first time in the wild, we now have Glalie. There is a legend that says Glalie was born from a boulder that has absorbed the distress and regrets from any mountaineers that got lost on icy mountains. Do we have a SpongeBob meme? It's not a boulder, it's a rock, for Glalie. Can we just get that out there? Anywho, Glalie's icy body is actually rock that is not particularly hard. There's your inspiration right there. Anywho, when covered in ice, its body becomes harder than steel. It does not melt, and it can control ice by instantly freezing moisture in the air into any desirable shape. This ability is used to drape itself in ice armor and freeze its prey, which it then consumes whole. Yes, all the white on its body is not actually Glalie. Whatever it is actually encased in that ice. It prefers consuming Pokemon that are already frozen, such as Vanillite, so we know who's hunting that down. It can also be found in caves, particularly when the outside weather lacks snow. So, it's hunting Vanillite, that explains its evolutions being here, on top of it just being a great place for those Vanillite to grow and evolve. I also just love the idea of a giant head flying towards me and eating me whole, don't you? Now, with Glalie, it may have appeared thanks to Sneasel as well, as they appear at the same time as we go up the mountain. Thus, I assume Glalie is eating whatever it can and not really getting picky in these cold lands, while maybe looking for those sweet treats that are our ice cream looking Pokemon. In addition, there's only two other Pokemon that are likely being hunted by it, those being our Alolan variants of both Sandshrew and Vulpix, which do not have their evolutions here in the wild at all, likely because Sneasel and Glalie have spread out their feasting options enough and cull each other a little bit, reducing the pressure on these two Pokemon. Alolan Sandshrew has a steel-like covering that grants it extra defense from predators like Sneasel, but it is unable to curl into a ball like its desert counterpart. Smarter predators, such as Weavile, exploit its soft underbelly. Alolan Sandshrew can burrow itself in the snow to avoid being blown away by blizzards. Its claws allow it to move without slipping on icy surfaces, but it slides on its stomach when it needs to move quickly. A traditional Alolan custom during festivals is a competition to see who can slide Alolan Sandshrew across the ice the farthest. Now, with Sandshrew, it was eating snakes, small mammals like Rattata, eggs, and roots. But here, with Alolan Sandshrew, it might just be digging under the ice and snow for its meals, such as those roots, maybe mushrooms. Overall, having a diet probably similar to Swinub. We can support this due to this version's Sandslash being adept at digging through ice and snow easily. I'd be willing to bet that it might be another prey of Glalie, considering its very icy exterior, but again, it's probably not hunted too much, otherwise we'd have its evolution. Now, meanwhile, Alolan Vulpix is believed to have arrived in the region at the same time as humans, but moved to the snow-capped mountain to avoid other Pokemon. It can be found in small packs called skulks that are led and protected by Ninetales, yet it doesn't SOS call it. Alolan Vulpix can expel breath as cold as -58 degrees Fahrenheit, -50 Celsius, which is capable of freezing anything. While it is not suited to warmer environments, its tail can produce ice to lower the surrounding temperature if needed. An old local name for this Pokemon is Keo, referring to its white pelt. Weavile is a natural predator of Alolan Vulpix. As mentioned in Pokemon Sleep, it prefers to sleep in cold, freezing places. Whenever its resting spot starts to warm up, it will use its cold breath to change the surrounding area into a more comfortable temperature. It will have the same diet as regular Vulpix, and this might actually be the reason we don't see Weavile, whereas Sneasel might have the upper hand in groups. Not only is every other creature here able to fight back, they might even be moving in numbers, which balances out Sneasel and its group tactics. This might also mean that Alolan Vulpix might try to eat Sandshrew on occasion. You might also be able to make the bet that both of our Alolan variants will attack Raticate and Gumshoes for food and vice versa. It might just depend on who gets to jump on who first. I mean, it is an Arctic-like environment after all, which can be pretty brutal even in the real world. Other than that, you could throw in Golbat, and you've covered all of our normal encounters that we do find here. Now, that omen that Absol is warning you about with its presence here is that after the main events of the story, as you climb this mountain, you will run into Necrozma, who has crash-landed here after you encounter it within Ultra Megalopolis. But we'll save Necrozma for later and instead close out Ula'Ula with Tapu Bulu, found in the Ruins of Abundance, otherwise known as the Ruins of Harvest. Its shell, when closed, takes the shape of a bull. This guardian of Ula'Ula Island is able to command vegetation to grow and change shape to its will. Despite its fearsome power, it is largely inactive, leading some to consider it a lazy Pokemon. It has a peaceful disposition and does not like to cause unnecessary violence, so it rings the bell on its tail to alert others of its presence. However, it is merciless to those who offend it, and it is said to have once repelled thieves from its ruins by swinging trees like clubs. The ruined Tapu Village stands as another example of the Guardian's wrath. And while it feels redundant to say, the grassy seeds brought about the flowers that give Bile Oricorio its power derives from this Guardian. Feels kinda odd though, since it isn't a grass type Oricorio, but the temperament of Tapu Bulu is what is passed on to the Bile Oricorio in this case, rather than the actual typing. And so, let's finish the final island of Alola, starting with the Poni Island environment itself. Poni Island, in the southwest of the archipelago, is the most sparsely populated of Alola's islands. It only contains one settlement in ancient Poni Path, however the Seafolk Village is a gathering location of seafaring people. Similar to the battle zone in Sinnoh, it is full of rugged and harsh environments. Though its coasts are fairly flat, the island is mostly mountainous and rocky, in part due to the sprawling vast Poni Canyon, described as a natural trial site. That takes up over half the island's land. Executor Island, a small uninhabited island that was once its own trial site, can be accessed in Seafolk Village. So, starting with Executor Island, it's a paradise for Executor. This island is designated as a special preserve. Now, they execute here still photosynthesize, but they get to live in peace. Here, they get so much sun that they are heavier because they have more energy and are full of far more nutrients, allowing them to evolve into a lowland Executor. Due to the abundance of sunlight in the Alola region, the Executor that live there grow over 5 times taller than those in other regions. The region is considered to be the best environment for Alolan Executor, and its neck is thinner and much longer, causing it to more closely resemble a coconut tree or tropical palm tree than its Cantonian counterpart, which resembles the shorter desert palm. It has a long, tapering tail with 2 leaves and a 4th light green head on the tip. This extra head can also act on its own and defend the rear. The tail can use weak telepathy to scan the surrounding area. Its long neck can be used as a whip to attack enemies with its hard head. However, its neck can also be a weak point, as it will become dizzy swinging it around. Its increased height reduced its need for a psychic defense and has instead awakened its draconic powers, resulting in its psychic powers becoming weaker. Ancient carvings and murals depict this Pokemon, and it is considered the pride of Alola by its natives. Alolans take pride in its appearance, claiming this is what Executor ought to look like. Its extra height makes it the tallest and heaviest grass-type Pokemon, and this might actually be its original home, thanks to info that we do see in Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire, which states Executor originally came from the tropics. Pair that with the murals that we find here, and we have assumedly its original homeland, or at least the most far back dated piece of information depicting this Pokemon. The fun thing about it is that it hasn't changed its diet, but it received everything it needed in order to grow to its full size. Then, from here, the Executor just continually make more Executes and populate the island, which also looks like them, in weird shape. Luckily, there are other species found here, such as Pinsir, Pelipper, Gastrodon, who is eating microorganisms, and Tropius, who eats nothing but fruit and shares that fruit with others, though it is likely not eating Executor coconuts assumedly. Would kinda be funny if it was. You can also throw in Sliggoo, who is eating whatever it crosses paths with, hugging them and melting them into oblivion. Otherwise, this is a pretty simple environment that can experience intense sun and heavy rains, which would explain why the Gastrodon come onto shore and why we do have Sliggoo here. Their skin is able to stay pretty moist due to the environment itself. Poni Wilds isn't much to talk about. Granbull, who is dog, Pelipper, Gastrodon, Furfrou, and Inkay. This just means that our dogs are more than likely, because this is right outside of the Seafolk village, guard dogs, especially since they are both species that stay close to humans. Inkay is definitely eating Crabrawler, I will say at least. Ancient Poni Path is the same for the most part, but then we get to step into Vast Poni Canyon. The most challenging path on Poni Island, the ups and downs of this canyon are beyond any other. In the caves are Machoke eating everything but meat still, which they're kind of just training with the water-drinking Boldore, even Mienfoo, and a couple of others. Skarmory sits at the top of the canyon, just waiting for someone to fall. Carbink floats around and doesn't accidentally call for help from Sableye here, because Sableye is not here. And then there's Lycanroc Midday and Midnight forms. Midday form has a calm, collected, and cautious personality. In order to avoid needless fighting, the Midday form prefers to live alone and does not form a pack with others of its kind. However, it is a fiercely loyal partner to trainers that accept it during its unruly stage. In battle, it darts past opponents while attacking them with the rocks in its mane. These swift movements leave many foes bewildered and backed into a corner. It always aims for the foe's weak spot using its fangs, and broken fragments of its stone mane are considered good luck. Meanwhile, in contrast to its midday form, Lycanroc's midnight form is thrilled by battling and becomes more excited the stronger the opponent. This excitement is what causes its eyes to glow. The midnight form is known to be reckless, along with an extremely vicious temper. Its strategy consists of closing in on its opponent and encouraging attack, then countering with a powerful blow that knocks out its opponent. The full force of its headbutts can destroy giant boulders. Trainers that can draw out its full power earns its trust, but it despises those that it disagrees with or who try to force it to fight. Dogs are gonna eat as dogs do, but I'm willing to bet that midnight form might be a strict carnivore. After all, it's supposed to represent a more wild nature, and even werewolves for that matter. It's just interesting to find out that Mienfoo doesn't seem to be absolutely obliterated by the Lycanroc threat, likely meaning that the collection of Pokemon here keep Lycanroc in check, or it doesn't really care about going after Mienfoo. Another new entry here is Jangmo-o. While it trains diligently and remains humble, it has the pride of a warrior. It employs the scale on its forehead for both attack and defense, so it never shows its back to its foe. Many trainers take this behavior as proof of this Pokemon's valiant nature. It lives and trains with others of its kind in harsh areas that are far away from other Pokemon and people. These scales on its back make a metallic sound when struck and are used to express emotion, communicate with others of its kind, and intimidate opponents. The sounds made by a group of Jangmo-o are known to be particularly noisy. And the only hint that we get of this Pokemon side is when it states that Kommo-o will let out a victory howl after finishing off its prey. This line of Pokemon as a whole does enjoy a good fight, likely meaning that it will continually challenge itself against other Pokemon, and any that it would deem as proper prey will be eaten. Though the Jangmo-o in this section specifically only appear 5% of the time. As such, they're probably just wandering in here and are not really actually actively eating anything. Maybe a Mienfoo on the rare occasion. As you do go through the caves though, you'll run into Golbat and Dugtrio, and then in the water it gets a little interesting, because we find Golduck, who was likely pressured into evolution as it was hunted by and hunting other fish and water life here. There's Barboach, who primarily bottom feeds but will attack other fish. Magikarp is here, Corphish, who is an opportunistic omnivore, and then the aggressive Basculin. Otherwise, we can lead straight into the Totem Trial, as most of what we have here seems to be Pokemon that are randomly running into each other. I know we have random encounters, and I know that seems a little bit off, but when you look at all the Pokemon here, Machoke isn't hunting anybody down, and probably isn't actively eating anything here. It's just running into train, which there's a lot to train against with all the different Pokemon that either A, are just aggressive, or B, are strong against it, so it can train up better and better. Again, Jangmo-o is wandering in. It might be attracted to the fish in this area as well, or it is training itself up so that way it can evolve. And then, again, Lycanroc Midnight form is just punching whatever seems most appropriate to it and then eating it afterwards, most likely. This is one of the only trials, though, that do not have a kahuna or trial captain. Instead, the Jangmo-o line self-regulates themselves as they live here and thrive. It is also the only place in all of Pokemon in which a Scizor naturally occurs. And no, space-time distortions in Alabaster Islands and Pokemon Legends Arceus do not count. Those are unnatural rips in time. Neither does the biome within Blueberry Academy, technically. Scizor's body and muscles are made of metal that is as hard as steel, with pincers strong enough to crush any hard object. They can be opened and closed like jaws and are patterned with black eye spots with yellow, quote-unquote, pupils. It will raise its pincers and wave them around to scare off predators or foes, giving it the appearance of having 3 heads. When it identifies an enemy, it will use its pincers to beat up the opponent to the point where there is nothing but scrap left afterwards. Scizor is normally incapable of flight. Instead, it quickly flaps its wings to regulate its body temperature to prevent itself from becoming too hot and melting. Although it still can hover and glide for short distances, as shown in the games and animated series. It has tremendous power despite its slim body. Assuming its diet hasn't changed, like Scyther, it is eating everything with a pulse, except our Jangmo-o line here, unless it wants to be ripped to shreds due to the community that they have. If anything, it might be here because they might all be training together. Or, more specifically, all those scales that come off of the Jangmo-o line might be influencing any Scythers that would have been here to evolve into a Scizor. Now, we also get our first wild encounter of Noivern here as an ally to the totem fight. Noivern is known for its violent temper, but becomes tame if approached with its favorite ripe fruits. From its ears, it can produce ultrasonic waves strong enough to shatter large boulders. It uses these waves to freely navigate through the darkness. It is also known to be cruel, ruthlessly tormenting enemies that cannot see well in the dark, such as Hydreigon, before using its ultrasonic waves and fangs to finish them off. However, Noivern becomes timid when exposed to the light. So again, we get another Pokemon that is a fighter, going after a bunch of fruit. Maybe it'll eat a fish here or there, but we have no confirmation of that. Honestly, there is the chance that the Noivern here are friendly with the Jangmo-o as well and don't really bother them. They might create a friendly little environment together, which then allows them all to thrive really well. Now though, we can move on to our dragons, because again, while we know their diet, I want all of their information. Jangmo-o's evolution, Hakamo-o, this Pokemon leaves its fellows to begin training on its own and can be found wherever there are opponents for it to fight. When it finds an opponent, it dances and clangs its scales together to show its strength. It's kind of like a rattlesnake almost. This ferocious dance climaxes with a challenging war cry. Because its scales serve as armor, it overwhelms its opponents with attacks without worrying about its own defense. This battle style causes many of its scales to be torn off or broken, which is probably, again, how we get our Scizors here. Hakamo-o considers its broken armor and bare arms as proof of a well-fought battle and wears them with pride. However, these scales begin growing back immediately and harder and sharper than before. Its scales conduct heat well, so shed ones are often molded into pots and pans, and there's our final piece of confirmation. Meanwhile, with Kommo-o, having completed its harsh training, it returns to its birthplace to protect Jangmo-o. However, it only watches over them from a distance. Go, I ain't no helicopter papa, go do your thing. At least until you almost die, and then I'll step in. Now, the power of this Pokemon's uppercut is enough to send foes flying, so simply raising its arms can generate enough force to change its surroundings. That may explain why Poni Cannon itself is 1, self-regulated, and 2, maybe carved the way that it did. With enough fists being thrown, it may have changed the entire course of this canyon. Now, according to legend, its glittering scales are meant to drive away a great darkness. The reason it seeks strong opponents is also said to be a quest for power to defeat said darkness. Those scales function as both offensive weapons and defensive shields. Because it does not wish to fight weak foes, it clangs its scales together when it senses someone approaching. Weak or cowardly opponents will panic at this sound and flee immediately. It also swings the scales on its tail to threaten any enemies it sees. Upon finishing off its prey, Kommo-o will let out a victory howl. Additionally, the metallic sounds made by its comrades celebrating can also be heard all around the area the group is in. While the animated series shows that Kommo-o is capable of bipedal locomotion, the core series games since Generation 8 show that it vastly prefers to walk and run around by knuckle walking, kind of like a ape, gorilla. What we do find here is a community of warrior dragon Pokemon, creatures that take pride in combat in a fair fight, wanted to keep peace and, as they say, drive out darkness, which is something we find often with our fighting type Pokemon. Fighting types are supposed to represent heroes after all, and these are some of the loudest heroes we will ever meet. Also, I'm 90% sure if anything tries to fight it, it's gonna eat them. Like, it's probably gonna punch them down and be like, alright, here's my next meal. Now, the next couple of routes do add in Pokemon we've discussed in past editions. Tentacruel, Carvanha and Sharpedo, who eat everything, Wailmer and Wailord, eating up plankton and other small fish maybe, even a Pelipper in the area by accident, Luminion eating whatever fish it can as it walks on the bottom of the floor, going after Starmie, which I haven't seen at all in this region, Lapras eating every fish, Relicanth filter feeding despite its real-life inspirations doing more than just that, but then we finally get to see Dragalge and Clawitzer in the wild. Let's cover Dragalge since I never had the chance to speak on it. Dragalge is a territorial Pokemon that will spit poison at whatever trespasses on its territory. Its poison is strong enough to melt the hulls of metal tankers, and as a result, it is said that ships sailing through the seas where it lives never return. It hunts by hiding itself in seaweed and then ambushing prey, such as Finizen, with a spray of poisonous liquid. However, it is known to coexist well with Dhelmise. Dragalge can create dragon energy by absorbing the sunlight through the plume on its head. Note to self, do not go near its territory or it will kill me and everything that I love. Now, while it is not hunting down Sharpedo, I doubt a Sharpedo would go through the trouble of trying to eat one of these Pokemon, as while it might survive, it may get badly damaged. It's like a bobcat and a bear. Bears avoid bobcats because it takes too much energy to kill them and they will likely get injured. Otherwise, Dragalge here is eating pretty much every other fish that crosses its path. Meanwhile, since we didn't even get to talk about Clauncher before we get into Clawitzer, let's start with that first form. This is what I get for covering Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon instead of Sun and Moon, because normally you would find a Clauncher here instead of a Clawitzer. But either way, Clauncher's large claw gives it a poor sense of balance and makes it difficult to swim straight. Instead, it moves by firing compressed water from its claw. This is achieved through controlled expulsions of internal gas. Additionally, it uses this ability to shoot down flying prey and can shatter rock at close range. Occasionally, its claws will fall off, causing it to go into hiding until the claws grow back. The meat inside is said to be delicious, however, it has a characteristic taste that is not universally loved. An acquired taste, if you would. So, flying creatures, we could say it's bugs and might be a few actual weaker birds, but when it evolves into Clawitzer, we can definitely say we have another Pokemon that is eating probably other fish, in addition to anything that flies above it, as long as it's not incredibly powerful. Clawitzer are a territorial species known to fiercely battle against each other. Their massive claw can suck up water and launch it as compressed cannonballs capable of piercing tanker hulls. I don't know what birds will survive that, but this is Pokemon, so of course some of them will. By using the gases inside its body, water can also be expelled from the nozzle on the back, which allows it to travel at speeds of up to 60 knots. The feelers on Clawitzer's claws can detect the location of its prey. The claw itself is packed with meat, which can be used as a cooking ingredient. I'm willing to bet they eat each other, Magikarp, Carvanha, maybe even Luminion, and then honestly, these waters, as we move away, are just full of conflict. I feel like this is the 4th or 5th area where we've seen a ton of conflict, which is also why we see so many aggressive or evolved Pokemon. It is the coast to the ocean, so this shouldn't surprise us too much, I suppose. Now we're gonna fly through the next 3 sections for the most part, before completing this island with Poni Plains and the Tapu of this island. In Poni Gauntlet, the most significant addition is Bewear. While Bewear may appear friendly, it is actually a very dangerous Pokemon, even considered to be the most dangerous Pokemon in all of Alola. It must never be approached carelessly, even if it is merely swinging its arms around in a friendly fashion, which is used actually as a warning. It shows affection with a fond embrace, but its hugs have an incredible force. Trainers of this Pokemon must teach it how to restrain itself when showing affection. Its hugs are powerful enough to shatter bones and have killed many trainers. This is not me exaggerating, this is what it says. The reason Bewear hugs others is due to accepting that person as a friend. It also uses its arms to subdue its prey, before taking it back to its nest. I really should just do a video on 1,000 ways to die in Pokemon, and this is going to go on one of them. Anywho, it is capable of using amazing martial arts moves, said to have learned them by observing black belts training in the woods. Why are we teaching the bears to fight? We don't know what a gorilla's maximum strength is because we've never taught it bodybuilding techniques. We're not doing this. We're not doing this, okay? In Lentil, Bewear are known to hibernate during seasons when food is scarce, and as mentioned in its sleep style decks, Bewear on very rare occasions can be seen hugging a log while sleeping. The reason is due to it mistaking the log for a friend. However, these logs tend to be smashed to pieces accidentally due to Bewear's immense strength. As depicted in the anime, Bewear is highly intelligent, capable of performing remarkable feats. Some of these feats are running fast on the ocean, building tools such as a wooden motorcycle, jumping very high in the air, and despite its size, Bewear can move very, very fast. I've actually calculated in my how fast does every Pokemon move, or how fast is the fastest Pokemon, video that I created. Yeah, Bewear's moving pretty freaking fast, and it is very protective of its cub Stuffle. It loves to eat honey made by Combi and berries. A bear's gonna eat what a bear's gonna eat, and we also find in this area Granbull, the insectivore Lickitung, Inkay, Golduck, Magikarp, Barboach, and then the bottom feeder Dratini. As we move into Poni Meadow, it is fairly peaceful with Cottony, Petalil, Ribombee, Floette, which is a pretty consistent grouping of Pokemon when we look at these meadows, and then Mischievous joins along at night alongside Magikarp, Dratini, and Barboach in the water again. Though it is in this meadow of blue flowers that we find Senzu-style Oricorio. This Oricorio has sipped purple nectar. Some dancers use its graceful, elegant dancing as inspiration. It charms its opponents with its refined dancing, and when they let their guard down, it places a curse on them that will bring on their demise. And, by the way, it literally summons the spirits of the dead to assist it in battle. I would be willing to bet that Mischievous is attracted to this Oricorio, and it is, as we have seen in every other meadow, thanks to our Pokemon that we find here, that the flowers thrive so beautifully. We land in Resolution Cave briefly, where, sure, we add in Druddigon to the area. The only other encounter of significance is actually Zygarde, keeper of balance within the ecosystem. Now, I'm not going to talk about Zygarde in excess, considering I did so in my Kalos Eco video, but to find it here means that it was responding and preparing to fight against the threats that are the Ultra Beasts. Now, we find ourselves in Poni Plains, and I'm going to say this right now, this is the most intimidating little area I have seen in a long time, just by the sheer number of Pokemon species. So, prepare yourself. Raticate at night. Tauros and Miltank roaming around and eating grass, probably not being bothered by any Pokemon for the most part. Cottony, Petalil, Trumbeak, and Gumshoes in one section, all of them in one section. We eventually move forward and find Fearow, in addition to a Pokemon that appears 20% of the time, Mudsdale, who is known for both its powerful body and emotional fortitude, which prevents it from becoming agitated. Regardless of the trouble it is in, it will never cry out and will defeat opponents with a single blow. The mud around its legs gives its kicks extra force. One kick can turn a car or large truck into a scrap pile. When galloping, its hooves can dig holes in asphalt. While it is not swift, it has excellent stamina and can continue on for 3 days and 3 nights while dragging over 10 tons of weight. It will mix dirt and saliva to create a special mud with resistance to both wind and water. The mud is also harder than even stone. Because of its unique qualities, the walls of some old houses were coated with Mudsdale's mud. It is highly treasured for both physical labor and pottery made from its high-quality mud. In Alola, Mudsdale is used as a ride Pokemon to allow natives to travel across rocky terrains, and it's gonna enjoy some good old fruits, veggies, grass, and hay. I actually wouldn't be surprised if it did eat some clay in order to clean itself out a little bit, or can actually digest it proper, but as a note, do not eat clay. Any talk about it helping you is not correct, and in fact, to my knowledge, and whatever research I was able to pull up, It can lead to iron deficiencies as it hampers your ability to absorb essential nutrients. So, stick to eating food you're supposed to. There are no cheats to good health. To finish Mudsdale though, nothing is bothering it. I doubt even a Tauros would dare mess with it, because Mudsdale would kill and bury it with a single attack. Moving on, Hariyama is here for a good fight and some fatty berries. Braviary is hunting everything here except our biggest boys that we find. Mandibuzz is waiting for its chance to swoop in as a carrion bird. Prime Ape is punching everything that dares prevent it from getting to its favorite fruits, probably the birds as well for that matter. Actually, it's because there are so many aggressive Pokemon here that we find so many evolutions in this area if you've started taking note. Aipom, oddly enough, is probably just getting bopped around a little bit here, but it's just going after the same fruits and somehow not evolving. Emolga eats bugs and berries. Scyther is too big of a bug and eats whatever it can kill while getting attacked by our big birds. Chansey, poor Chansey is having a heart attack trying to keep everyone alive. And then, after all the commotion, the battles, the hunting, the sparks flying, earthquaking, and punch throwing, Pyroar bursts from the brush in an ambush encounter to eat anything that can spill blood, with exclusion to Mudsdale still. Like real-life lions, Pyroar lives in prides, which are led by the male with the largest mane. The pride's females protect the Litleo cubs and teach them how to hunt. The females also work together to bring down prey, ensuring the pride never goes hungry. A male Pyroar is usually lazy, but will protect its friends at the risk of its own well-being. In battle, the male Pyroar's mane can heat up to over 3,600 degrees Fahrenheit, 2,000 Celsius, which can cause severe burns when approached. You don't even have to touch it, just approach it. And I've done glass blowing. When you are near that furnace, yeah, it's hot. You can get burnt by standing in front of it for too long. Anywho, Pyroar viciously threatens any challenger with a fiery breath exceeding 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit or 6,000 Celsius. However, it prefers its meat raw and does not use its breath on its prey. It typically lives in grassy plains and mountainsides. Thank you for being accurate to real-life lions, Mr. Pokemon. It is greatly appreciated. I do also love that it specifically will not use its fire on anything that it wants to eat. But can you see why this is such a whirlwind of a route? It is filled to the brim with Pokemon, and I didn't want to waste time over explaining them when they've been established for the most part in the past and can be easily and quickly explained now. But how about we finalize Alola itself with Tapu Fini, residing within the Ruins of Hope, otherwise known as the Ruins of the Other Side, which is said that life ends its journey here. Now, as the guardian of Poni Island, Tapu Fini can freely manipulate water and it gains energy from ocean currents. It is both respected and feared. To avoid harm to itself in battle, it shrouds its surroundings in a mysterious fog that sends its opponents into a self-destructive trance. The guardian also unleashes this fog as a test for those who seek the special water it can create, which is said to cleanse anything unclean that it touches. Many humans have attempted the trial, including those with ill intent. And, disgusted by this history, Tapu Fini does not care much for humans. Despite this, it is at least still willing to help those who prove themselves worthy. It can make water clocks out of water, and bridge the world of the living with the world of the dead using its mist. And long periods of exposure to this mist can trap people within it forever, specifically targeting those who cannot endure the pain of seeing a deceased loved one again. From the beginning of life on the first island, to the great beyond and life after death on this final island, this is just another reason why I love Alola and the Tapus. But, as with all others, it is through Tapu Fini that its influence brought about Misty Seeds, the purple flowers, and our Senzu-style Oricorio. But we aren't done yet. Because now we can ascend to the top of the Altar of Sun and the Altar of Moon, and as we play our song in honor and respect of the altar, we summon an ancient light to give Cosmoem the energy it needs to evolve one more time. For you see, there is an ecosystem here that extends beyond Alola and connects it into Ultra Space. An ecosystem that started with Ultra Necrozma itself, the blinding one. For through its light, it has kept other worlds alive, though after it lost its light and its form, it turned into a black crystalline form that was racked with constant pain. This state being unnatural to its existence, and so it began to hunt for Solgaleo and Lunala, two creatures who create their own light in infinite and can recharge Necrozma to its full form and keep other worlds, other entire universes alive. For it was Necrozma's light that graces Alola itself, grants Z-power, and even life to the islands itself. Despite this though, Solgaleo and Lunala flee, for they were prey and Necrozma is their predator. The two left to Alola where long ago they defeated all four of the Tapus who originally acted separately as opposing forces, but are now united under the two legendary Pokemon. This is when not one or two, but many Cosmog beyond our knowledge were distributed to the Tapus and throughout the world. Their mission is to guard them, so that way they may absorb enough space dust to eventually evolve into Cosmoem, then be brought to these altars and evolve into Solgaleo, emissary of the sun and bringer of the day, or Lunala, emissary of the moon and bringer of the night. Their species, creatures that can infinitely emit sunlight and moonlight, would then be kept alive and eventually be consumed by Necrozma for their light. We now stand before our legendaries as the largest Ultra Wormhole opens up and Necrozma comes to take its necessary meal. This is also our chance to explore Ultra Space. Ultra Space is an interdimensional realm from where Ultra Beasts may come, being accessible via Ultra Wormholes. Ultra Space and Ultra Wormholes were discovered and named by Professor Mon of the Aether Foundation. Professor Burnett, a researcher of the relationship between Pokemon and other dimensions, is researching these strange phenomena. Ultra Space itself is a spatial realm filled with crystalline meteoroids and is populated by members of the Cosmog line. It links to a number of different worlds and dimensions through differently colored Ultra Wormholes called Warp Holes. While they may naturally occur, these wormholes are more commonly deliberately opened by Cosmog, its evolutionary relatives Solgaleo and Lunala, and Necrozma. The Ultra Beasts typically accidentally get sucked into wormholes, landing in our world or other worlds, and are then confused and defensive invasive species that believe that they are fighting for their lives. They are Pokemon, but from another universe, their DNA being just different enough to make regular Pokeballs ineffective, but not useless, and the requirement for Beast Balls to be used. With this out of the way, let's step into the first of many dimensions, Ultra Deep Sea. Ultra Deep Sea is a dark world with many caves that include several colorful rocks in the shape of flora on the walls that resemble diamonds. The area that the player arrives in contains a small pathway that you can navigate through. Nihilego can be actively seen traveling through the area. There is also a small rocky platform in the middle of the area that you can sit on to attract local Nihilego. Now, it is the first Ultra Beast to be discovered by Professor Mon of the Aether Foundation. He was also the one who coined its name. Nihilego live in another world named Ultra Deep Sea, as we are talking about, although its exact levels of intelligence are unknown. It is believed to act upon a self-preservation instinct. However, in addition to its human-like shape, it is sometimes seen acting like a young girl. Potentially, this may even mean that this is an immature polyp, as we will soon find out. According to Wick from the Aether Foundation, Nihilego's most distinctive feature is its parasitic capability. When it latches onto a host's head, it does not manipulate its actions directly. Instead, it awakens the host's own capabilities and boosts them to an extreme extent in order to protect itself. It injects the host with a sort of neurotoxin to achieve this effect. This neurotoxin of Nihilego's is incredibly stimulating and inspires feelings of extreme excitement and a lack of inhibition in its host, meaning that you can eat the entire tub of icing if you really want to. Anything or anyone that Nihilego latches onto will have its native skills forcibly activated to their fullest extent and will then act as it naturally desires to. Pokemon Adventures also elaborates upon Nihilego's neurotoxin, explaining that its venom turns their negative emotions into happiness and pleasure. It's also said that Nihilego mostly feed on those who feel intense worry or anxiety, which is why Lusamine was the perfect target. She lost her husband Mon and was obsessing over Ultra Space. Wick also claims that like all Ultra Beasts, Nihilego stores Z-Power, the same energy possessed by Totem Pokemon, within its body, which takes the form of a red flaring aura. As seen in the games and in the Homecoming Crown, Nihilego are capable of creating illusions, such as making itself and its allies vanish, or even capable of seeing the memories of humans. That same episode also showed that Nihilego can demonstrate emotions other than self-preservation and the ability to heal people. It can freely merge with its host, changing its form entirely in the process, though it will release toxins that will stay in the host's body even if it does willingly separate from the host. Otherwise, it may take full control of the fusion and prevent the host from escaping its body. And when it takes over and it goes through this change, it is a dramatic change. It gets much, much larger in size. As such, with its jellyfish-like nature, we can very much assume that it is a parasite in order to get the nutrients it needs to become its full adult form. And Nihilego is arguably one of the scariest Ultra Beasts thanks to its ability as a parasite, making its host stronger and more reckless until they die, in which case it just needs to move on to the next host, and then the next host. They aren't inherently evil, just as most other Pokemon are not evil, but they have dangerous effects. And something we will notice is that the worlds we enter are usually completely dominated by these Ultra Beasts, as they create a monoculture. The Ultra Jungle is a large expanse of jungle containing both regular trees as well as several larger spiraling trees in the shape of muscular beings flexing their upper torso and arms. These larger trees are either freestanding or connected with vines that the player is able to walk across. A river also winds between the connected trees, and there is an active smoking volcano in the center of the map which tends to erupt and can summon buzzwoles as a clear blue sky passes overhead. Here in this tropical environment, we have the perfect concoction, my goodness, to create a super mosquito being Buzzwole. Its proboscis is said to be harder than a diamond. It is powerful enough to destroy a dump truck with a single punch, and according to Wick, Buzzwole's most distinctive feature is its skill to strengthen itself, being able to absorb energy and then achieve a chemical reaction between the energy it has absorbed from another living creature and its own body fluids. As a result, Buzzwole's body swells to an almost explosive extent. Its muscles bulge and are so thick and dense that they are stronger even than steel. Both its attack and defense experience a leap in power. It also displays a habit of striking a pose each time that it takes any sort of action. It is thought this might serve as a method of communication, but it is not well understood. What's most interesting about Buzzwole is that it instinctively goes after other Pokemon and absorbs their energy. What could be scarier is that we have not explored the entirety of any of these worlds, meaning that while Buzzwole is a fearsome and powerful creature, there are likely many of them. Though even more terrifying is the idea that if it is not the apex predator in its land, then what is? What creature can easily counter it? And if there isn't one, then Buzzwole is yet another creature that has created a monoculture. Though now I'm thinking about it, and imagine a Buzzwole being born, and what we know as Buzzwole is just its final form. It starts off as maybe a Small Mites kind of situation, and then slowly builds itself up to have those just absolutely roided out muscles. Ultra Desert is a vast desert landscape filled with turquoise crystals and flowing sand. There are several rocky structures and monoliths scattered around the landscape, as well as what appear to be small clusters of shrubs. There are several large boulders, and even one giant chunk of a cliff larger than any found in Alola. There is also some rocky terrain that you need a Mudsdale Gallop to pass through. In deserts like this, we don't find much food, and any water would absolutely destroy many of the structures found here due to how dry it is. Most interesting, though, is what we can derive after reading about Pheromosa, who lives here. Its speed is believed to be fast enough to even dodge lightning. When we look at the structures here in Ultra Desert, while there is not a sign of actual rain from our time here, rain may still exist in some capacity in order to support life. And when it does rain, it will likely storm, or you will have dry lightning. Meaning, some of these crystalline structures came to be after lightning struck the sands, and if Pheromosa can dodge lightning, this could be why. It is adapted to have such high speeds by avoiding lightning all the time, and its cockroach-like nature is likely due to the fact that there's not a lot of food. So it's going to be this lithe creature that doesn't need food to survive. Alternatively, moving in sand is very difficult, so it could simply have very strong muscles and just moves easier on the sturdier ground full of dirt that they find in Alola. Now, Pheromosa displays a considerable reluctance towards touching anything, as if it interprets the Pokemon world as being unclean somehow. According to Wick, Pheromosa can reach speeds exceeding 120 miles per hour or 200 kilometers an hour in just an instant. This speed is greater than any other living creature that has been discovered to date, apparently. Fun fact, it's not. There are faster Pokemon out there. Its most distinctive features may in fact be its beauty and its powerful pheromones. Most any creature that squares off against Pheromosa becomes confused, as if struck by the beast's beauty, and loses the will to fight. It is still a subject of research, but it's thought that Pheromosa may possess some sort of organ able to produce a pheromonal substance previously unknown to science. Those pheromones may be vital to locating other Pheromosa across their homelands, though I fear what its counterpart would look like, since it seems rather picky about who it associates with. These sands baked in the sun would also be more sterile, which would also explain its reluctance to touch anything at all. The Ultra Plant is a dark world that suffers from frequent lightning strikes from storm clouds that cover the sky. Large monoliths are visible protruding from the surface of the planet. Various sizes of circuitry can be seen in the distance, ranging from regular-sized 12-foot 6 ones that the player encounters to massive ones that loom over in the distance that lightning bolts strike at. The two monoliths that the player arrives on to encounter circuitry are connected by a giant circuitry appendage that glows and wraps around the landing zone, and as lightning strikes down in the area, the appendages light up as well, and smaller circuitry can be seen running around disconnected from the ground. Can you say monoculture? Because these living circuits have absolutely taken this world over. I would not be surprised if the entire planet, as hinted at through artwork, is just one giant circuitry, which is amazing and terrifying all the same. In addition, this land is just one big dry thunderstorm, which means all the rain is evaporating before it even reaches the ground, making it incredibly dangerous. There is a very good chance this world would have had so many wildfires that it became uninhabitable until the circuitry found this to be perfect for their species to thrive. Now, within Ultra Plants, circuitry have been seen to be unmoving, with their arms and legs stuck to the ground by many of them, similar to trees as they absorb electricity from the ground. Circuitry vary greatly in size, from being a little bigger than a human to being the size of a mountain. Because this Ultra Beast reportedly raided a power plant in Alola, it is speculated to sustain itself with electricity. Witnesses claim that its entire body crackles with astonishing electrical power. And according to Wick, its most distinctive feature is an organ that can generate power. This Ultra Beast's bodily makeup is highly reminiscent of electric wiring, thus enabling it to conduct electricity with great efficiency. It can discharge as much as 1,000,000 volts of power at a time. When it begins to run out of power, it stabs its legs and tail into the soil, entering a tree-like state as it absorbs electricity from the ground. This is one of the few creatures in Pokemon that derive all of its energy from electricity, eats it, uses it, produces it, everything. And my question is, how it is able to attach to the ground and generate electricity through this fashion. It's very interesting because typically you would need a metal to serve as an anode and a metal to serve as a cathode with a salt bridge or porous partition between them, and ground itself is not that. So either it is able to draw upon atoms or ions themselves, or there's a next level secret happening here and we just don't really know. Ultra Forest. The landscape of this world is that of a large expanding forest with trees sprouting flowers resembling the world's Ultra Beast, Kartana. The leaves on the floor are rectangular and resemble paper, and the ground appears to be sandy, resembling a Japanese rock garden. At the end of the area is a large rock where Kartana can be fought. Before the final encounter, Kartana slashes a rock in two before battle. It seems that the world is habitable to humans as well as Pokemon, most likely due to the atmosphere. Here we find not only Kartana, but Kartana envoys, people who are not their trainers, as they don't use Pokeballs, but are rather equals with the Kartana, people who work and live alongside them in peace. After all, that's what a Japanese rock garden is supposed to represent. And then we arrived, and they were ready to throw down with us to make sure we don't ruin this world of peace. According to Wick from the Aether Foundation, Kartana's most distinctive feature is its thin and razor-sharp body, of which every edge has as cruel a cutting edge as any well-honed blade. The edges on its arms are particularly in a class of their own. Any opponent who tries to attack it will be cut down with a single strike of its blades. Its thin body also allows it to evade attacks by dancing lightly out of the way. This is a very dangerous creature, considering its excellent offensive and defensive capabilities, but due to the nature of its body, it is also highly vulnerable to fire and moisture. In the animated series, it has been shown to be able to open up wormholes and has the ability to speak the human language, albeit in reverse. It opening up the wormhole only occurred after it seemingly sharpened itself upon a meteor that was coming down onto Alola. It slices it up, breaks apart the meteor, in turn sharpens itself, then cuts a hole into reality and then dips. Wild, honestly. Now, Kartana is supposed to be a common organism where it lives, which, once again, makes me wonder who else exists in this world. It seems safe, so this could be explored far more in a quest to understand what a full ecosystem here could be like, especially if there are other paper-like species similar to Kartana that live there. The Ultra Crater is a large, expansive world with several craters filled with a green substance. The land has what looks to be metal pipes growing as roots throughout the rock, most likely from the many Celesteela that have planted themselves there. A few red monoliths stick out of the ground as several geysers are also present, shooting out steam. Several Celesteela are frequently present in the ground as the world is frequented by earthquakes due to Celesteela launching themselves out of the ground and into the sky. Large, mountainous terrain is pictured in the background. The sky is actively yellow due to the geothermal activity from the geysers and the Celesteela. Unfortunately, this likely means the only living creatures here other than Celesteela are likely protists who would be able to survive on such an extreme environment. It's not uninhabitable, just not the safest for creatures that require more than moderate temperatures, less earthquakes, and to not be absolutely cooked by steam. Celesteela, though, live in this world, and it appears to grow out of the ground like a plant in its homeworld, before exploding the ground itself, and flying away into space for unknown reasons. According to Wick, Celesteela's most distinctive feature is the energy that it stores within itself, a flammable gas that it can shoot from its two huge arms. This is mostly used to propel itself in flight and for battle, but it has sufficient power and lift to even fly into space. Its bodily construction closely resembles that of a plant, and it absorbs nutrients from the soil. Celesteela's rocket thrusters are powerful enough to destroy an entire bamboo forest, which is actually pretty incredibly strong. They're kind of sturdy. As seen in Rise and Shine Starship, it has a long lifespan, as one was buried in Alola, growing for over 200 years. This could then mean that they are not actually native to Ultra Crater, and considering their inspiration draws upon the story of Kaguya-hime, the princess from the moon, they may be from the moon in their home universe and simply grow on other planets full of warmth in order to reach their maturity. This would mean that they are just living rocket bamboo and would photosynthesize in some capacity. And finally, because Ultra Space Wilds is more of a shallow catch-all for ecology that is really only meant for you to get all your past legendaries, let's finish off with arguably the most fitting for an ecology video, Ultra Ruin. The Ultra Ruin is a destroyed, futuristic Hau'oli city from another dimension. The ruins are situated on top of a toppled skyscraper. Multiple doors and faded signs for a tourist bureau, an apparel shop, a malasada shop, and a salon are visible on it, suggesting the city was arranged as a block of flats. The only characters that can be interacted with are a man in a protective Guzzlord-themed suit and a Guzzlord itself. According to the suited man, the people of this world fled to other planets, but he remained in order to keep check on Guzzlord, which he refers to as Mr. Glutton endearingly. He wears the suit because breathing too much air in the place is dangerous. After catching Guzzlord, the suited man says that it has taken a liking to the player and asks them to take good care of it. The Student Man will also provide the player with tidbits of information on some of the debris and items that can be interacted with, such as a working filtering machine to make dirty water safe for drinking, an electronic Holy City beachfront display, which appears to be the only remnant of the color blue in this world, relocation notice cards, which served as virtual storage devices when machines that could read them existed, posters for a power plant, others from its kind having been burned for fuel by people from 2 generations ago, and the rusted sign, said to have been from a long lost era. Sorry, I kind of got a little sad there just from the idea of like the color blue just completely disappearing thanks to pollution and debris and everything else. Now, according to the man, older people did not like hearing about this power plant, although he himself does not know why. This is because before Guzzlord's arrival, Alola and potentially even other parts of the world were completely dominated by industries that polluted the environment thanks to the context clues that we find here. This ruined nature, which in turn caused the Tapus to abandon the islands. And when Guzzlord arrived, there was nothing that could stop it. When it did arrive, it began turning everything into a barren wasteland, but was not the reason for the toxic air and the pollution initially. Because while mass destruction would cause air pollution and difficulty breathing, it would not necessarily immediately become toxic. In addition, Guzzlord itself does not expel toxins. Its second face on top of its body may actually be its real head. Its body is said to feel like hard rubber, and in order to eat, its tongue moves in a wave-like motion that pulls food towards its mouth. It has an astounding appetite, devouring not only objects, but the ground, rivers, and even seas. There have been reports of it eating mountains and buildings whole. Despite the massive amounts that it consumes, no droppings have been found, which may suggest its digestion is perfect, converting everything into energy in order to sustain itself and growing larger. Wick states that its most distinctive feature is its limitless appetite. It feeds without pause every moment that it is awake. It uses the 2 large tongues that protrude from its mouth to catch and devour everything in its path, be it organic or inorganic matter, and otherwise it is just unstoppable for the most part until you really band together to punch this thing down. And I will say, there have been some rumors that Guzzlord resembles Zygarde in many different ways, and may even be just simply a corrupted form of it that could not save its world. But if you want to hear more on that, go check out my Pokemon Iceberg series. And before we depart from this place and head back to Alola to close everything out, it is terrifying to consider an absolute force against nature like this, a creature that will not die and instead consumes literally anything, as it will only continue to eat and grow until there is nothing left. If there is anything I hope I have taught you indirectly or directly with all of my videos, especially my ecology ones, it's to do what you can to love our world and protect our environment. It needs all the help that it can get, and we should be doing our part to not encourage massive companies to produce damaging waste into our world. But with that, we exit Ultra Space, and we are complete in our understanding and analysis of the Alola ecosystem. With a little bit of Ultra Space, at least the parts that we are aware of. I didn't even talk about Poiple's homeworld, as that is anime only, but if you want to know about all the Ultra Beasts, I do have a video on that as well that you can check out. It was fun, and I treated that like an SCP video, but with that, we are officially done here. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. And if you did enjoy, please ensure you do subscribe, share this with others, maybe even become a member for as little as $3 a month, as again, YouTube ad revenue is not reliable. In addition, I am doing a fun little membership marathon on May 15th through 17th, where donations do provide you the ability to fight your professor in a number of different areas or battles within games, and you get some rewards as well, or at least I get some punishments. But before we officially go, I would like to shout out all of our members that we have now. Starting with all of our Gods of Hope with Biggins, Heals for Life, and Vandit Lemon. Then all of our champions, Andrew, Mercedes, Costa, Elizabeth, Lovacon, Joshua, Biggest Wilson. Followed up by all of our Knights of the Court, Cruppo, Fix My Nitrogen, Dylan Perrine, Double Plow, Annie Stone, Alan, Heals for Life. And then all of our Wanderers, Edward Kosowski, Pudding Fox, MN Ranger, Hawthorne, Andrew Dyson, Teshimon, Tan Zanzibar, Chef in a Bottle, Justin Green, JV Green, Mitty the Mad Mitty, Tavis Lamb, Fennec Fox, Bend Over, Sporty Yamper, that got me. Evil Chan, Max Supreme, Octoshade Woomy, Charles Reed, Rosa Pekin, Tyler, Darius Regan, Silver Lazarus, Supporting Boy, DPM, Pander, Nerdisk, and Freeberg, Lost Wisteria, Soft and Kai, Kamutog 123, Hag, Adicadabra, Bach 1000, KO 23, Pre-Ignite, Akantar, Artie, Shiny Blastoise 52, Krill, Final Fantasy 14, Matt S, Marco Man, Colin Moore, Kieran Trick, Crawlin Crow, Zyplum, Plush Kids, Zami DeBroyer, Nate Conley, Sophie Sav 13, Wise, Tom York, Scoreblaze, Slap Slime, Daniel Oleva, Quinn, Jude, Rod, Ellis, Zenko, Sweshy, Speed Noob, Tatapat, Ravi, Ramsey, Sardonic, 8-Bit Ducky, Poke Odin, Tracker, Soylent, Bean, Chris Willis, Great Lake Feathercoat, Nix, Stars, and then Karusu, Lindor Wolf 312, Iana, Traffy, Starbreed, Flostradamus, Zane, Yetum, Black Air Force Energy, Just Another Vegan on YouTube, Sidefwag Gaming, Red Wolf Eagle 13, Shory Song, Ezzo, Kurotin, Whimsical Stray, Unknown, Uwu, Lazy Link 17, Metiel, A Cooler 1, Axel, Bad Choice Man, The Very Average Gamer, A-Town, Level 99 Boss, Bitter D, Destron Gaming, King Pie, Planet Blob, Happy Petabanda, Tempest Zeta, Jade Twaster, B, Tens, TS, Jose Colado, Pokefan Girl 23, Michael Gibbons, Konosuga, Guya, Libro Cubicularis, I'll get that one day, Dalton Queen, Durs, Brian Millie, Julian Warner, Dice, Carby, Abdallah Eladi, Ren, Generic White Man Name, Jack of the Frost, Precious Snivy, Ruby, Addie C, Jacob Square, DJ Monk 23, Squidwater, Rice Smith, Gamer, Bad Dragon, Just JM, Vanny Samaru, Star S, MD with a horse, Hey Bale Yeet, Micah 626 Gaming, Muse, Art World, Salumio, Gwendolyn, Escanner 072, Andrew Frost, Peak Anonymous, Summon Slot, Knock Nuyen, Ian Ray, Big and C9, whatever this is, Corn on the Cobb, Scott, Carlisle, Heather Wisden, Dylan Peters, and Malachi Burkhart. Thank you all for being members of the channel. If you want to hear your name in the credits at the end of every video, become a member, get behind the scenes content and videos early. And maybe you can ruin my ability to say all of these names before the Heart Gold end credits. With that then, as always, thank you so much for being here. Don't think I want to do, don't think I want to do. Please be nice to each other. I love you and I'll see you next time.